Chapter 525. Bright stars mixed with the whistling sound of the king's battle flame rushed towards Luo Lan in the sky. Even Luo Lan did not dare to underestimate this attack. He opened his palms and divine power surged. Balls of flames whistled out and condensed into the shape of a fire umbrella. With a sinister smile on his face, he said, "With your advancement, you will definitely step into the godly state in less than 10 years. How can I allow you to live in this world?" Boom, boom, boom. The 7 glorious stars transformation kept splashing on the fire umbrella. Flames and starlight soared into the sky. Heaven and earth shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. Shock waves swept out in all directions, uprooting the grass and trees on the ground. Under the destructive force, even the stone tablets of the heavenly book in the distance could not escape and were all shattered into pieces. After this attack, Luo Lan's aura weakened a little. At this moment, a person had already separated the flames. A dazzling stars soared with the power of the 7 glorious celestial sword martial soul slashed down from the sky. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Luo Lan raised his head and his face was filled with anger. Courting death. Turning his palm into a claw, Luo Lan's 5 fingers grabbed the star's sword like an iron claw. With a dang sound, he grabbed the sword's body. However, a ray of light directly leaked out from the sword's body and attacked Luo Lan's body. It was the light-splitting slash. Under the attack of the pure energy body, Luo Lan's body trembled. The faint godly state aura on the surface of his body slowly dissipated. However, his fingers grabbed the sword's blade even tighter. His eyes were filled with anger as he said, "This star's sword is a treasure that I gave to the god of the heavenly realm. How did it appear in the hands of a little bastard like you? Give it to me." Luo Lan forcefully grabbed the sword, and a strong force forced Lin Muyu to let go. Swoosh! The sword hilt left his hand, but it was accompanied by thick flames. Lin Muyu's handsome face was almost distorted. He raised his iron fist and endured the strong backlash of the 7 glorious stars transformation. He heavily attacked Luo Lan's abdomen with the 6 glorious heavenly tribulation. Luo Lan's eyes were cold. He lightly lifted his left leg and kicked at Lin Muyu's fist with divine power. Bang! An explosion of energy reverberated through the air, and the 6 luminaries' heavenly tribulation was scattered just like that. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu's right hand was shaken to the point where it went numb. After all, there was a great disparity in strength. How could a Holy King-level elite fight against a God Realm elite head-on? But at this moment, Lin Muyu suddenly withdrew her right palm. The flames were dense, and the star's sword in Luo Lan's hand spun rapidly. Crack! Luo Lan was actually unable to hold onto the stellar sword. Under Lin Muyu's control, the stellar sword spun in the air. Lin Muyu then turned around and sent a dragon flame spiral at Luo Lan's head. Insignificant skill. Luo Lan laughed heartily. She opened her mouth and blew out a gust of air. With a hua sound, it turned into a piercingly cold storm and directly blew the stellar sword away. At the same time, she turned around and punched Lin Muyu with her left fist. Luo Lan's speed was too fast. Lin Muyu was caught off guard and could only summon the dragon blood shield on her right arm to block it. Bang! Her entire right arm felt like it was about to shatter. There was a sweet taste in her throat, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Lin Muyu directly fell from her mouth. At the same time, Qin Yin's figure appeared behind Luo Lan, and the heaven-suppressing sword stabbed straight at the back of Luo Lan's head like lightning. Clang! Sparks flew, and in the midst of the sound of metal colliding, Luo Lan's body trembled. The god state Gang Qi at the back of her head was slightly pierced by the heaven-suppressing sword. The tip of the sword even pierced the surface of her skin, and it was already bleeding. Just as Luo Lan angrily tried to turn around, Qin Yin's beautiful face was covered with frost. Her left hand lightly opened, and the god-binding chains shone brightly. She heavily slapped the hilt of the sword. Bang! The golden dragon flame of the 4th heaven of Zhanlong was sent out by her palm. With the heaven-suppressing sword as a medium, the flames exploded and instantly swallowed Luo Lan's body. At this time, Lin Muyu fell heavily to the ground. Looking at the soaring flames in the sky, she murmured, "Xiao Yin." Although the golden dragon flame attack seemed to have succeeded, Luo Lan's aura did not weaken by much. Within the flames, a huge flaming palm slapped out, straight for Qin Yin's chest. Boom! In an instant, the sacred dragon shield shattered, and the 3 protective god-binding chains also shattered. The difference in cultivation between Qin Yin and Luo Lan was too great. Under the power of Luo Lan's palm, her delicate body fell like a kite with its string cut. Blood sprayed through the air. She was already seriously injured. "Qin Yin, you must not die." As if possessed, Lin Muyu gathered all her remaining strength and rushed over. Her falling star steps flashed, and she hugged Qin Yin in the air. Both of them tumbled to the ground. Behind them, Luo Lan's voice sounded like a demon from hell. "That's fine. Since the 2 of you die together, then let Qin Jin's daughter and adopted son go to hell together." The sky was filled with flames. Luo Lan's palms held a flaming mountain range in the shape of an impact. Her eyes were filled with arrogance and laughter. She suddenly waved her arms, and the destructive impact instantly fell from the sky, covering an area of nearly 100 meters. With Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's current state, there was no way they could escape in such a short time. However, at this time, a jade pendant appeared in Lin Muyu's hand. The golden characters on the jade pendant shot into the sky, glowing with a rich green light. In an instant, it activated the power of heaven and earth. It was a supreme-grade spiritual tool embryo of the law of space. Wang. In half a second, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin in her arms disappeared. All that was left on the ground was the swirling battle aura. In that split second, Luo Lan's fierce attack had also landed. Pang! The ground shook violently, and a patch of green grass turned into a basin. Flames shot into the sky. Luo Lan's attack seemed to have created a purgatory on the ground. It was extremely terrifying. Sensing that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's auras had not disappeared, Luo Lan suddenly turned around and saw that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had appeared in the forest 200 meters behind him. A supreme-grade spiritual tool embryo of the law of space could only teleport them so far in an instant. If it was a heavenly book or a divine book, it might be able to teleport them thousands of miles away. What a cunning person! Luo Lan had an absolute advantage in terms of power, but he could not kill Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. He suddenly became a little angry and flew into the air with his palm full of divine power. He was determined to kill them with his next attack. After using the shattering void shuttle once, Luo Lan had to rest for a while before he could use it again. Therefore, he could only fly over and look for an opportunity to kill Lin Muyu and Qin Yin again. However, when Luo Lan arrived above the 2 of them, Lin Muyu had already regained some of his stamina. He activated his remaining power and a mystical golden true qi circled around his arms. It was none other than the Fuxi celestial power in his mortal body. Furthermore, it was a very pure strand of the Fuxi celestial power. Even Luo Lan's celestial power was nowhere near as pure as the Fuxi celestial power. "Do you want to fight again?" Luo Lan squinted his eyes with a faint smile on his face. Although the divine power in Lin Muyu's arms was very pure, its strength was far inferior to his. Perhaps he only needed one blow to see the gap between them. How could Lin Muyu not know the gap between them? However, he had no choice but to fight with all his might. Otherwise, he and Qin Yin would die here. The golden battle energy on his arms kept circling. Lin Muyu's handsome face was full of resentment as he said, "Luo Lan, you bastard! You killed Grandpa Lei Hong. Today, we will settle the old and new accounts together." Bastard! Luo Lan was furious. He raised his arms and divine power enshrouded him. In Iha country, no one dared to scold him, Venerable Luo Lan, as a dog. Now that he was scolded by Lin Muyu, he naturally felt very unhappy. Pa! Lin Muyu leaped up into the air. She had already accumulated all of her strength. The Fuxi celestial energy and the power of the Star Chen art surged in her arms, and she was like an arrow that shot into the sky. She raised her arms up high, and in an instant, the celestial energy in her arms cooled down and turned into the ice spirit star energy. She slammed right into Luo Lan's fiery golden palm. Puff! There was a muffled sound, but it was not the expected explosion. On the ground, Qin Yin's eyes widened as her body trembled. She was worried about Lin Muyu, but there was nothing she could do. In front of an ultimate god like Luo Lan, what could she do as a heavenly venerable? She was full of unwillingness, but she could only silently pray to God to protect Lin Muyu. Hiss, hiss. Streams of icy qi rose into the air, and Lin Muyu turned into an ice arrow that brushed past Luo Lan's shoulder. In the next moment, she started to fall to the ground. Wah! She spat out a mouthful of blood, and the clothes on her chest and shoulders were torn apart. Her body was covered in wounds, and it looked extremely terrifying. If it was a normal person, they would have been torn to pieces by Luo Lan's attack. In the air, Luo Lan's body stood still in the wind. A few seconds later, frost climbed up his beard, and then more and more. In the blink of an eye, Luo Lan's body was covered in frost and turned into a block of ice. The only difference between Luo Lan's body and the people who died under the jade snow ice before was that Luo Lan's body did not explode. Instead, wisps of golden divine power appeared in his meridians, slowly dispersing the power of ice. Lin Muyu fell heavily to the ground, but she struggled to raise her head and said, "Xiao Yin, kill him." Qin Yin held the heaven-subduing sword without saying a word. Her snow-white long legs slightly lowered, and rays of starlight enshrouded her surroundings. After accumulating some power, she leaped up and slashed at Luo Lan, who was in the air like a crescent moon. However, the moment the blade approached Luo Lan's body, there was a sudden pop sound. The sword light was rebounded as if some kind of restriction was protecting Luo Lan. Qin Yin was rebounded by the divine power and flew away with a whimper. Her injuries worsened. Lin Muyu looked at her dispiritedly and gritted her teeth. Her palm flashed across her Qingkuan pouch and took out a dazzling battle-axe. With a light flip of her wrist, heaven and earth energy was activated. Earth Law Lower Grade Earth Book, Ruck. Boom boom boom. On the ground, a series of rocks shot up into the sky. The power of the Earth Book was actually so shocking. With a bang, a sharp rock all landed heavily on Luo Lan's lower body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Even though he was a God-state expert, after enduring so many attacks from Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, Luo Lan seemed to be at his limit. Chapter 526. Rustle, rustle. Ice shards continued to fall. Luo Lan's old face, which was almost distorted, was filled with anger and humiliation. His palms trembled slightly, and rays of golden divine power quickly revolved around him. He looked down at Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ai. Lin Muyu helplessly sighed. He no longer had any strength left in his body. Not far away, Qin Yin was lying under a maple tree. She didn't say a single word and seemed to have fainted from her injuries. Xiao Yin. Lin Muyu leaned on his long sword as he slowly stood up and limped towards Qin Yin. His vision was a little blurry and he almost couldn't see Qin Yin's figure clearly. Luo Lan looked at him in the air and actually felt a trace of pity in his heart. Lin Muyu, you were originally a peerless talent, but why did you have to be my enemy? I'll give you a chance now. As long as you leave the empire and join the 7 world palaces, this sovereign will accept you as my disciple. How about it? Lin Muyu raised his head and looked at him. He couldn't help but find it funny and burst out laughing, causing his wounds to ache. Luo Lan, you're just a despicable person without any martial virtue. You've been cultivating for thousands of years, but you still haven't made any progress. You think you're worthy to be my master? Put away your hypocritical mask. I feel disgusted just looking at you. You! The golden light in Luo Lan's palm became even more intense. His voice also turned cold. Since you want to die, I'll give you a complete corpse on account of your talent. Buzz! Luo Lan raised his palm, and a golden light soared into the sky. This attack was definitely going to take Lin Muyu's life. Lin Muyu walked towards Qin Yin step by step, completely ignoring her. Looking at Qin Yin's beautiful face lying under the tree, he actually felt a trace of warmth in his heart. It seemed like it was worth it to be able to see her one more time before he died. Luo Lan didn't understand love and naturally wouldn't have tender feelings for the fairer sex. His powerful palm was about to descend from the sky. Just as the palm was about to land, a dignified voice suddenly sounded from the distance. A figure flashed through the bushes like a bolt of lightning, shooting out from the depths of the forest. Before Luo Lan could even see the person's face clearly, he had already struck out with his palm. The power of the divine heaven realm quickly swept through the surroundings, and his 5 fingers were filled with icy chi as he struck out towards Luo Lan. "Who are you?" Luo Lan didn't have time to say anything. She could only send the palm that she had originally intended for Lin Muyu to the middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. When the 2 palms of fire and ice collided, a gust of wind suddenly swept through the surroundings, blowing Lin Muyu to the ground beside Qin Yin. She almost couldn't open her eyes. Bang! With a sudden burst of energy, the middle-aged cultivator's palm surged with boundless ice attribute profound energy, and actually forced Luo Lan to fly back several steps before stopping. Blood had already flowed from the corner of her mouth, and her injuries had also worsened. "You? Who exactly are you?" Luo Lan quickly recovered the energy in her body, and her gaze fell on the person who had just arrived. The middle-aged man had a dignified appearance as he calmly smiled and said, "Ice Palm Wu Tong. I have guarded this white leaves forest for nearly 10,000 years. Why, since you've already stepped into the divine realm, why don't you ascend, and instead act like a tyrant in the mortal realm?" "Ice Palm Wu Tong?" Luo Lan coldly said, "And who is Ice Palm Wu Tong?" Wu Tong's face was filled with pride. He crossed his arms and laughed loudly. "Before God Emperor Fuxi ascended, he ordered us to guard the forest of heavenly tome monoliths in the White Leaves Forest. Anyone who doesn't have a fortuitous encounter that intrudes is to be killed without question. Old brat, hurry up and get out of the White Leaves Forest. Even if I don't kill you, someone will naturally kill you." "Needy, scram." He pointed outside the forest and growled, "I'll count to 3. If you don't scram, the only thing left for you is death." Luo Lan had never been threatened like this before. Her face instantly turned ashen, but there was nothing she could do. The person in front of her had a deep understanding of the laws of ice, and his ice palm was incomparably powerful. Just now, when she had exchanged a palm strike, her arms were still numb and cold. She probably didn't even have the strength to resist a second palm strike. If this Wu Tong really wanted to kill her, she would probably be killed as well. Swish swish, streams of ice energy began to encircle Wu Tong's palm. He was already determined to kill. Luo Lan's expression turned cold, and the divine power in her body seemed to slowly respond. The time limit for Void Tread was up. With a crash, a spatial crack appeared behind Luo Lan. He floated in and looked at Lin Muyu from afar. He sneered, "Lin Mu, Qinin, we will meet again. Your lives are mine, Luo Lan. Remember this." Swish. Luo Lan's figure disappeared along with the spatial crack. Wu Tong turned around and walked towards Lin Muyu. At this moment, Qin Yin had already awoken. Her beautiful eyes looked at Wu Tong and she asked, Was it this uncle who saved us?" Lin Muyu nodded. Wu Tong did not buy it. He pointed outside the forest of heavenly tome monoliths and said, "All of you leave as well. If you don't leave in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, I will turn you into ice fragments with a single palm strike. Don't doubt my words. My nickname of grim-faced Wu Tong is not just for show." Lin Muyu fell to the ground and then sat cross-legged there. She said, "We're already so heavily injured that we don't have the strength to walk. If you want to kill us, then do it. It's just that I didn't think that the people God Emperor Fuxi left to guard the heavenly tome monolith forest would be so indiscriminate." Wu Tong's sword-like eyebrows rose. "What do you mean indiscriminate? This Supreme One is only responsible for guarding the heavenly tome monolith forest. I don't care about anything else. I don't care who you are. In any case, leave immediately." He looked at Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, who was still lying on the ground. Suddenly, he creased his brow and said, "Forget it. I'll give you 2 hours to heal your wounds. Once you've recovered some strength, you can leave." Lin Muyu nodded and took out a bottle of healing medicine from her cosmos sack. She gave a bottle to Qin Yin, and then sprinkled some medicine on her wounds. Afterwards, she took out a new set of hunter's clothes and put them on. She sat cross-legged on the ground, and then brought her palms together to heal her wounds. Fuxi's divine energy flowed through her meridians like a spring breeze, unclogging the blockages. Streams of faint golden light flowed around her body, creating a marvelous sight. Wu Tong crossed his arms and looked at Lin Muyu from a distance. When he saw the Fuxi's divine energy flowing through Lin Muyu's body, he could not help but be slightly startled. His brow creased, but he did not say anything. Several minutes later, there was suddenly a sharp whistle from the forest. An old man dressed in an azure robe appeared in the forest. He wore a golden badge on his chest. He was a member of the 7 world palaces and had the cultivation of a holy venerable. Unsurprisingly, he was Luo Lan's disciple. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin. He quickly recognized them, and when he saw that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin were heavily injured and had already lost the ability to fight, he rushed over with a loud laugh. Laws of wind danced wildly in his palm as he laughed loudly. You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but by chance you find it by chance. I, Duanmu Fong, am going to make a great contribution to the 7 world palaces today. However, before he could completely unleash his palm force, Ice Palm Wu Tong suddenly rushed forward. He suddenly stomped on the ground and looked at his opponent in the air. Icy chi surged in his palm as he roared angrily, "You dare to kill someone in my territory?" Duanmu Fong abruptly raised his head, and his face instantly paled. He had been careless and had not sensed that there was a saintly heaven realm expert beside him. Wu Tong's palm force descended from the sky, as if a glacier had descended. How could Duanmu Fong block it? His 2 palms instantly shattered into a pile of ice, and his body was unable to move. He was directly smashed into pieces by Wu Tong's palm. At the same time, with a bang, a massive palm of ice landed on the ground. It was exactly the same as the one that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had seen before, presumably Wu Tong's handiwork. This ancient expert that guarded the heavenly tome monolith forest was actually so terrifying. After cultivating for over 10,000 years, even if he had not broken into the divine realm, his strength was probably no less than the exalted god Luo Lan's. Clap clap, after landing, Wu Tong looked at Duanmu Fong's dismembered corpse and lightly clapped his hands. In the territory of Ice Palm Wu Tong, only I can casually kill someone. As Lin Muyu healed her wounds, she narrowed her eyes as she watched the battle unfold. Her heart was in turmoil. What a fine Ice Palm Wu Tong. His strength and character were both rather solid. It seemed that he would not die at Luo Lan's hands in this heavenly tome monolith forest. As he continued to heal his wounds, Fuxi's divine power was an innate healing divine power. He quickly healed his injured body. To the side, Qin Yin also sat cross-legged, the god-binding chains transforming into the image of a golden divine dragon that circled around her graceful figure. With the bloodline of the true dragon, the speed at which she healed her wounds was not much slower than Lin Muyu's. Not long after, when Lin Muyu's wounds had mostly healed, a clear and bright laughter suddenly came from the forest. Suddenly, a hearty laughter came from above the forest. "Wu Tong, you weakling, why haven't you come out yet? Your grandpa Zhengjian is here." Zhengjian? Wu Tong's body trembled, his straight eyebrows knitting together. That ugly freak actually came at a time like this. Bastard, he's simply a bastard. This old man's wishful thinking is going to come to nothing. On the branches of the forest, a middle-aged man dressed in fiery red soft armor suddenly landed on the ground. His body was surrounded by the domain of the divine heaven realm. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he said with a smile, "Just now, this old man sensed energy ripples in this area, and even gods appeared. I was worried that if you were killed and had your head cut off, you would lose face for the god emperor, so I came to see if you were dead or not." Wu Tong immediately patted his chest and said, "Your grandpa's palm energy is vigorous, so how could I have been killed? But you, on the other hand, are you running to my place to escape? These past few days have not been peaceful. Quite a few experts have entered the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. I'm afraid that your territory will soon be lost. Bullsh***. Zheng Jian's temperament was clearly a little more explosive. He said, "This old man was just fretting about not having a place to use my fire fist. The more those people come, the better." As he spoke, Zheng Jian finally saw Lin Muyu and Qin Yin behind Wu Tong. When he saw the golden Fuxi divine power flowing on the surface of Lin Muyu's body, he could not help but tremble. He said, Who are they?" "Fated people, my guests," Wu Tong indifferently said. Bullsh***. Zheng Jian quickly walked forward, arriving in front of Lin Muyu. He raised his hand and pressed it on Lin Muyu's shoulder. Immediately, a vigorous flame energy surged into his body. "You don't be impudent," Wu Tong growled. Zheng Jian did not care. Only when his power was being resisted by the Fuxi divine power in Lin Muyu's body did he suddenly open his eyes and retreat several steps. He knelt on one knee before Lin Muyu, cupped his fists, and said, "Fire Fist." Zheng Jian pays his respects to the successor of Fuxi. Chapter 527. Fuxi's successor? Lin Muyu's eyes widened. Why do you call me Fuxi's successor?" Zheng Jian raised his head and smiled. "Because your body contains a strand of God Emperor Fuxi's divine power before his ascension. This feeling is far too familiar, so you are the successor that God Emperor Fuxi left in the mortal realm." Subordinate Zheng Jian pays his respects to Lord Successor. "If you have any requests, Zheng Jian will definitely help you." As he spoke, Zheng Jian glared at Wu Tong and said, "Old brat, aren't you coming to pay your respects? Have you already forgotten the teachings that God Emperor Fuxi instilled in us before his ascension?" Wu Tong could only kneel on one knee and say, "Subordinate Ice Palm." Wu Tong pays his respects to Fuxi's successor. Lin Muyu suddenly felt as if she had profited from a disaster. Fuxi's heavenly tome was truly a precious treasure. It had actually allowed her to become Fuxi's successor in this unfamiliar place. She felt as if she had grasped onto a life-saving straw. "You are all people that Fuxi left behind before his ascension?" Lin Muyu asked. "Yes," Zheng Jian said. "Before the God Emperor ascended, he left behind the 4 absolutes of white leaf to guard the heavenly tome forest of monoliths, to prevent the divine characters within the forest from being stolen by vile people with evil intentions." 4 absolutes of white leaf? Yes. The 4 absolutes are spiritual scholar Su Hao, Fire Fist Zheng Jian, Ice Palm Wu Tong, and the Beeman King that entered a berserk state over 3,000 years ago and was sealed by spiritual scholar. Beeman King. Lin Muyu was somewhat dumbfounded. That was definitely something incredible. "You can all get up first. There's no need to kneel while talking." "Many thanks, successor." Ice Palm Wu Tong stood up and respectfully said, "Not long ago, the seal of the heavenly imperial gate was opened. I presume it was the successor's doing. If not for that, the power of heaven and earth would not have returned to the shattered cauldron realm." Heavenly imperial gate? Lin Muyu was confused. Wu Tong said, "Yes, the seal of the heavenly imperial gate is completely tied to a divine book. This book is called Fuxi's heavenly tome. As long as the fated one opens the Fuxi's heavenly tome, the heavenly imperial gate will be reopened." "So that's how it is. In that case, I was indeed the one who broke the seal. Successor, who is this lady?" Zheng Jian's gaze fell on Qin Yin. The more he looked at her, the more beautiful she became. She was as beautiful as a fairy who had descended from heaven. "She is..." Lin Muyu thought about it and said with a smile, "She is my younger sister, Qin Yin." Qin Yin smiled. "Hello, both of you." Wu Tong and Zheng Jian immediately became excited. "Hello, miss." Zheng Jian did not know that many things had happened in the mortal realm, so he did not know who Qin Yin was. He only nodded and said, "This time, successor has come to the heavenly tome monolith forest, most likely to search for the mysteries of the heavenly tome?" "Yes, tell me about the secrets of the heavenly tome monolith forest." Lin Muyu straightened her body and said with a smile. Zheng Jian cupped his fists and said, Before the Fuxi celestial emperor ascended, he left behind the 4 grates of white leaves to guard the steel forest. Now, we've driven away a lot of giant vipers, fire monkeys, behemoths, and other spirit beasts to set up obstacles on the periphery of the steel forest. Then, in the steel forest region, a depth of 3,000 meters will be guarded by the hunting ghost generals commanded by the spirit scholar. This region is filled with inscriptions of the spirit tome. Wu Tong and I will guard the area within 8,000 meters. This area is filled with inscriptions of the earth tome. Another 15,000 meters will be the area guarded by the spirit scholar, Su Hao. He has been studying the heavenly tome of the law of life, commanding a group of hunting ghost generals that are neither human nor ghost. Their strength is unknown. There are some inscriptions of the heavenly tome buried in this area. Further in is the place where the Beeman King is sealed. The Beeman King has forgotten the teachings of the celestial emperor and has entered a berserk state. Lin Muyu asked, "Can I learn these stone tablets?" Zheng Jian smiled. Before the God Emperor ascended, he left behind these stone tablets precisely so that the heavenly tomes would not be completely lost. As Fuxi's successor, these stone tablets were originally left behind for you. So that's how it is. Wu Tong said, "Successor, that God realm expert who wanted to kill you just now, what's going on?" "He's called Luo Lan. He's the backer of the Iha kingdom, and also my mortal enemy. I once died at his hands." Lin Muyu's eyes were suffused with faint hatred. Wu Tong took a deep breath and said, "Truly a pity. If I had known earlier, this subordinate would definitely have taken his dog head for master. Luo Lan is not that easy to deal with." Lin Muyu shook her head. "He can shatter space and come and go as he pleases. Killing him is not easy, but the two of you must be extremely careful. This time, many people have come to the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. This place is practically completely exposed. If you don't mind, come with me." Zheng Jian and Wu Tong both revealed a troubled expression. Lin Muyu actually wanted to bring these 2 divine heaven realm experts back to the empire to serve, but she did not think that they would faintly refuse. As a result, she said, "After today, I'm afraid that the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest will be exposed to all the cultivators of the world. There will be an endless stream of people who will come to cause trouble. If the 2 of you stay here, sooner or later, you will bring about a fatal disaster. Why don't you come with me?" A hint of excitement appeared in Zheng Jian's eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Successor, Zheng Jian also wants to go with Master to see the outside world of the continent, but we definitely cannot leave the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, or else we will vanish into thin air." Why? Lin Muyu was dumbfounded. Wu Tong pointed at the ground, his eyes flashing with difficulty. "Because there's a restriction placed underground. Before God Emperor Fuxi ascended, he left behind a restriction. Only in this area can we, the 4 absolutes of White Leaf, maintain our youth. Otherwise, with our trifling divine heaven realm cultivations, it's simply impossible for us to survive for 10,000 years. So, as long as we leave the area we guard, we will step out of the protection of the time restriction and instantly vanish into thin air, turning into a pile of bones. We actually should have died long ago." Lin Muyu was stunned. She clenched her fists and muttered, "How can I save you? How can I remove this restriction, or continue to maintain it?" Wu Tong smiled and said rather emotionally, "Successor's concern, Zheng Jian and I both understand, but successor need not worry. Zheng Jian and I, 1 ice and 1 fire, have traversed this forest for over 10,000 years. What kind of opponent have we not seen? Even if we die, we will still guard the monolith left behind by the God Emperor. If successor needs Zheng Jian and I to leave this place, we will naturally open our hearts and do our utmost to cultivate. Once we break through into the divine realm, we will be able to condense godhood and obtain eternal life. Naturally, we will be able to leave this place." This is also fine. Lin Muyu nodded. "Then I will wait for you to step into the divine realm and come find me in the northern ridge." "Yes." The 2 of them cupped their fists together, their attitudes extremely respectful. It was as if they had already faintly taken Lin Muyu, the successor of Fuxi, as their new master. Not long after, Lin Muyu finished healing. It was time to replenish her strength. Therefore, she and Qin Yin gathered dry firewood and started a fire to roast the meat. When the pieces of swan ni meat emitted a fragrance, Wu Tong and Zheng Jian, the two peerless experts, sat at the side and kept swallowing their saliva. They didn't know how long it had been since they had tasted good food. The meat was golden yellow. Lin Muyu sprinkled cumin, vegetable leaves, and other condiments on it. The golden grease slowly flowed down the texture of the meat. It was extremely tempting. Gulp, Wu Tong swallowed his saliva and said, "Successor, what meat is this?" Swan and I. What? Could it be the meat of the ferocious beast Swan and I? Lin Muyu said, "When we were training in the North Ridge, we were lucky enough to kill a swan and I. We didn't waste it and cut off a lot of its meat. In a bit, you and Jing Jian should have a taste. The swan knee's meat contains abundant spiritual energy. Perhaps it can help the two of you break through into the deity realm a little earlier. However, the side effects are also rather strong. It has a dry and hot nature, so normal people simply can't endure it." Wu Tong smiled. "Successor, be at ease. This subordinate has cultivated the laws of ice for 10,000 years. No heat can invade my body." Then that's good." Lin Muyu nodded. Not long after, she cut up the meat and shared it. Qin Yin snuggled up to her side. The two of them were currently recovering from their injuries. Eating the rich spiritual energy of the swan knee's meat could speed up their recovery. As for Wu Tong and Zheng Jian, they didn't know when they had last eaten such delicacies. The two of them wolfed down the food like hungry ghosts that had been starving for tens of thousands of years. After eating, Wu Tong wiped his oily mouth and said, "Delicious. I really didn't think that there would be such delicious delicacies in this world." Lin Muyu glanced at him and asked, "Wu Tong, what did the two of you eat in the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest before?" Wu Tong was somewhat silent, then said, "There were behemoths roaming around the vicinity of the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, so normal prey simply didn't dare to enter. It was rare for us to be able to shoot down a few geese, swans, and other birds from the sky to satisfy our hunger. Normally, we wouldn't have such an opportunity, so we could only eat a few things that crawled on the ground, such as poisonous snakes and frogs. At the worst, we could only dig up underground rats and earthworms and roast them to eat." Lin Muyu couldn't help but dejectedly say, "The two of you have suffered." "It's fine." Wu Tong felt a tinge of bitterness in his heart. "The three of us were entrusted by God Emperor Fuxi, so no matter how much hardship we suffered, we still had to eat. Many thanks to Successor for your concern, and many thanks to Successor for this delicious meal." Lin Muyu asked, "Was it delicious?" Zheng Jian and Wu Tong simultaneously nodded. "Delicious. That's good." Lin Muyu faintly smiled. "Me and Xiao Yin still have quite a bit of swan ni meat in our spatial bags. Once we leave the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, we'll leave some for you. Many, many thanks to Successor." The two simultaneously knelt down, their faces full of gratitude. Lin Muyu took the water pouch from Qin Yin's hands and drank a mouthful, then asked, "On our way here, we saw quite a few potholes on the road. It should have been the work of the two of you, right? Just what happened?" Wu Tong couldn't help but feel somewhat embarrassed. 10,000 years is truly too dry and boring, so the subordinate and Zheng Jian would arrange a duel once a month. Unfortunately, in these 10,000 years, a victor has never been decided. Zheng Jian also respectfully said, "I hope that Successor does not blame the two of us. These 10,000 years are truly too long. I can understand this feeling, so I naturally won't blame the two of you." Lin Muyu stood up and said, "It's fine. Since the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest has reappeared, your mission is almost complete. I will do my best to take away all the heavenly tomes and divine tomes and leave the rest for the people of the world. You two should quickly cultivate and break through. Once you've broken through, come find me in the Empire. I will give you an important task." "Yes, Successor." Just then, the sound of horse hooves could be heard in the distance, as well as a human voice. "Your Highness, there's a stone monolith with divine characters. It's the earthly tome." Heavens, it's the earthly tome. Good, immediately surround it and make a complete copy of it for me, then smash it. Yes. Wu Tong couldn't help but crease his brow. Who is it that wants to smash the monolith? Zheng Jian clenched his fist, the light of fire lingering around him. If you want to smash the monolith, you'll have to ask my fist first. It's Qin Huan and the others. Lin Muyu faintly smiled. Fire fist and ice palm, it's time for you to carry out your mission. Go. Yes, successor. This subordinate will be back soon. Chapter 528. At dusk, dew fell upon the white leaves forest, soaking the grass and trees. A thin mist rose from the forest, like a white skirt. Russell, Qin Huan gripped his long sword and urged his horse forward. He dismounted, and 2 soldiers from the Iha kingdom waved their swords to cut down the thistles and shrubs, revealing a stone stele hidden under the shrubs. It was the Earth Tome's stele inscription on the Law of Fire. It's real! Qin Huan was extremely excited. He knelt on one knee in front of the stele and gently wiped the dust off it with his palm. It's the Earth Tome. Someone, wipe the surface of the stele clean, splash ink, and prepare to make a rubbing. Their method of making a rubbing was very simple. They would splash ink on the surface of the stele and then cover it with a white cloth. Naturally, they would be able to copy all the inscriptions on the white cloth. Several Iha Kingdom soldiers walked forward and quickly wiped the stele clean. They then took out some ink and slowly poured it on the surface of the stele. Half a minute later, 2 soldiers unfurled a white cloth and covered the stele. Qin Huan personally used his palm to caress the surface of the white cloth. Very quickly, ink seeped out, and the inscriptions began to appear on the white cloth. Whoosh! The white cloth was placed on the grass, waiting for the ink to dry. It's done. Qin Huan lowered his head to look at the stone stele, which no longer had any value, and said, "Once we leave, there will definitely be even more cultivators coming here to steal the inscriptions. Moreover, the inscriptions of the Heavenly Tome stele forest cannot be stolen by the dogs of the Empire. Someone smash the stele. The Heavenly Tome stele forest can only be used by our Iha kingdom." 2 generals carrying warhammers dismounted from their horses and swung their warhammers. Just as they were about to descend, a fiery light suddenly exploded in the air, like an undying bird of fire. In the next moment, an expert wearing fire-red soft armor floated onto the stele. He narrowed his eyes at Qin Huan and the others, and indifferently said, "It's fine if you want to steal the inscriptions, but you actually want to smash the stele. Do you know that this is a treasure trove left behind by God Emperor Fuxi after several hundred years?" Qin Huan froze. Seeing the sacred heaven realm domain around the newcomer, he could not help but pale. "Who are you?" One of the guardians of the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, Zheng Jian. Zheng Jian raised his finger, and a flame flew out, directly burning the white cloth that Qin Huan and the others had finished drawing on. His voice was extremely cold as he said, "I'll count to 3. Immediately scram from the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, or else I'll start a massacre." "You!" Qin Huan was furious. "What right do you have to burn our inscriptions? Bastard, I don't care what kind of Saint Heaven realm you are. Since you dare to make an enemy of me here, you are making an enemy of the Iha nation. Men kill him at all costs." As he spoke, Qin Huan leapt onto his horse and galloped for a few hundred meters. He escaped to the shelter of a group of bodyguards. Yi Xuanhuan raised his sword and said, "Iron Armor Army, prepare to attack. Archers, get ready." One by one, the cavalrymen raised their steel shields and charged forward with all their might. It was completely like a confrontation between 2 armies. Zheng Jian didn't care too much. He raised his iron fist, and the fire spirit and raging flames danced around his fist. He punched out, and suddenly, a huge fiery red fist mark wreaked havoc in the air. After colliding with more than 10 people, it disappeared without a trace. Those people were all burned to ashes, and even their steel shields were melted, turning into a pool of fiery red molten iron that fell on the grass. Those who trespass into the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest without permission die. Zheng Jian leapt up and fiercely punched the ground with both fists. Immediately, with a bang, a wave of fire swept out in all directions. The several dozen cavalrymen from the Iha nation were pushed back again and again. Many of them were already on fire, screaming as they tumbled off their horses. Swish, 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 arrows fell like rain, and they were the latest crossbow bolts developed by the Iha nation. Their penetrative power was extremely tyrannical. "Hey," Zheng Jian sneered. Suddenly, he looked up to the sky and let out a shrill cry. Flaming shields condensed around his body, deflecting all the arrows from the Iha nation. Even the white drill arrows could not penetrate this flaming shield. Like a bolt of lightning, Zheng Jian's figure flew forward and heavily punched Yi Xuanhuan's long sword. Clang! The flaming fist was as hard as iron, and it actually caused Yi Xuanhuan, who was at the Holy King realm, to take a few steps back with his horse. Zheng Jian's iron fist swung, and directly smashed the heads of the two Heaven Realm warriors who had come forward to attack him into pieces. He opened his hand and grabbed the neck of another Earth Realm warrior, and the flames burned his body inch by inch. Zheng Jian's eyes had turned red because of the massacre, and he shouted in a low voice, "Why are you still here? Do you want to be killed here? Bastard!" Yi Xuanhuan wanted to help, but he was powerless. The Holy King Realm fire fist in front of him was too powerful, and the flaming shield could defend against the arrows. It was as if there was no one who could stop him. At this moment, a loud and clear voice suddenly came from the sky. "You haven't even tasted my ice palm, and you want to leave?" Boom! A powerful frost energy descended, and a huge ice palm smashed into the ground, turning dozens of Iha country's armored cavalrymen into pieces. The huge palm print landed on the ground, and a dense icy aura spread out, causing people to shudder. Who is it this time? Qin Huan's mind was completely turned upside down. He had never faced so many peak experts before. Seeing the figure of Ice Palm Wu Tong landing on the ground, he immediately raised his long sword and said, "Spear and shield formation, surround him, and stab him into a hedgehog." A group of Iha nation soldiers pounced forward with their shields at the front, forming a circle in pairs. Spears pierced through the gaps between the shields and went straight for Wu Tong. This was the classic strategy that the Empire had used for many years to defeat the enemy with numbers. But Ice Palm Wu Tong was not a battle general who would charge and break through enemy lines. He was a martial artist with a deep cultivation, so it was much easier for him to deal with this sort of battle technique. He took in a deep breath, and instantly, the power of the ice laws in the air was almost completely absorbed by him. In the next moment, Wu Tong's figure flickered, and he struck out with over 10 palms in a row. Bang, 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 shocking sounds rang out incessantly. Wave after wave of Ice Palm Wu Tong shattered the Iha nation's steel shields, and the palm force penetrated through the soldiers' bodies, killing them and freezing them into ice cubes at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the Iha nation soldiers retreated in all directions. Those who were slightly slower had already become corpses. Ice Palm Wu Tong stood where he was with a calm expression, and there were already over 100 corpses around him. The Holy Realm was equivalent to 1,000 people, and the God Realm was equivalent to 10,000 people. This wasn't an empty rumor. Pinnacle Saint Domain experts like Wu Tong and Zheng Jian could indeed kill 1,000 elite soldiers in a chaotic battle formation if they went all out. Demons, they're demons. Qin Huan's entire body trembled. He suddenly grabbed Yi Xuanhuan's wrist and said, "Commander Yi, quickly think of something. What should we do? The soldiers can't hold on any longer. You have to act." Yi Xuanhuan's expression was stern. "Your Highness, these two people are both at the peak of the Holy Domain. This general is not their match. It's said that a Holy Domain expert can fight against 1,000 people. We've only brought 1,000 soldiers, so we're not their match. Let's go, let's leave this place. We can't stay here for long, or else we might lose our lives." "You!" Qin Huan's heart was filled with unwillingness, but preserving his life was more important. He immediately grabbed the reins, spurred his horse around, and said, "Retreat, retreat for me. Leave this forest of monoliths." As he watched Qin Huan and the others leave, Wu Tong crossed his arms and sneered, "A motley crew. This is the legendary Iha nation? Heh, what a bunch of rookies. Zheng Jian clenched his fists and indifferently said, "It seems like the heavenly tome monolith forest is truly about to appear. More and more people know about the heavenly tome monolith forest, and we're destined to be unable to defend it." "It doesn't matter," Wu Tong coldly said. "Aren't we the spiritual scholars Su Hao? His heavenly tome of life can resurrect dead experts, and this place, the dead experts will very quickly become a fighting force to guard the heavenly tome monolith forest." Zheng Jian looked at the corpses of the Iha nation soldiers and said, "These rookies probably don't even have the qualifications to be a fighting force. Resurrecting them is just a waste of the heavenly tome." "That's true." At this moment, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin walked out of the shrubbery. "Successor." Zheng Jian and Wu Tong cupped their fists and respectfully bowed. Lin Muyu looked at the surrounding battle situation and said, "These people left." "Yes, they were defeated and left." "That's good." Lin Muyu creased her brow, her gaze falling on a stone monolith in the shrubbery to the side. "Another earthly tome stone monolith. Xiaoyin, go read it. If you don't understand any of the characters, ask me." Thank you, big brother Yu." Qin Yin gracefully walked forward, her hands on her knees. She stood in front of the stone monolith, her round and perky buttocks sticking out as she read the divine characters. She was extremely focused and completely did not notice that Wu Tong and Zheng Jian were also absent-mindedly looking at her. On the other hand, Lin Muyu's heartbeat sped up. Not only was Qin Yin beautiful, her figure was also first-rate. The standard S-shaped curve was extremely rare in this plane, and if she were to assume this posture, it would practically take someone's life. "Big brother Yu, this character, I don't recognize it," Qin Yin suddenly said. "Oh." Lin Muyu walked forward and earnestly taught her. "This two horizontal and curved hooks is called the Yun character, which is the Yun character for floating clouds in the sky. As for this is the Rong character, which is the Rong character for a lifetime of military service, and this is the Bing character for marching in battle." In the end, there were dozens of characters that Qin Yin did not recognize, and Lin Muyu had to teach her one by one. Furthermore, he had to control himself from reading the entire paragraph, or else the earthly tome on this monolith would be comprehended by him. It seemed that the higher the level of the earthly tome, the more characters there were. This earthly tome had close to 300 characters, and after reading all of them, Qin Yin was instantly stunned. The next moment, the stone monolith slowly crumbled into dust. This monolith had already been comprehended by Qin Yin, and it was an earthly tome of the law of ice. Its attack power was very impressive. The strength of Qin Yin's soul was not very strong, and suddenly showed signs of fainting. Lin Muyu hurriedly supported her, but in the end, Qin Yin's eyes were tightly shut, and she had already lost consciousness. Without any other choice, Lin Muyu could only give Qin Yin a princess carry. Looking at her peaceful yet tired face, her heart ached. "Successor, what do we do now?" Wu Tong asked. Lin Muyu said, "Rest for a night. When Xiao Yin recovers her soul power tomorrow, we will set off to Spirit Scholar Su Hao's place. I want to learn the earthly tome grade of inscription." "I don't know if Spirit Scholar Su Hao will be able to resist Luo Lan and the others," Lin Muyu said worriedly. Zheng Jian laughed, cupped his fists, and said, "Successor, you don't have to worry too much. Su Hao's martial arts cultivation is definitely inferior to mine and Ice Palm Wu Tong's, but his heavenly tome cultivation is far above the two of us. In these 10,000 years, who knows how many heavenly tomes and divine tomes he has inscribed, and there are also many ghost generals on guard around Su Hao. Even if Luo Lan really does go, Su Hao will be safe and sound." That's good." Chapter 529. That night, there were no tents, nor were there any places to sleep. Wu Tong and Zheng Jian usually slept outdoors, lying on a rock and sleeping. Lin Muyu had no choice but to take out the white robe from her cosmos sack and spread it on the grass. Then, she used a few pieces of paper to form a canopy over a tree branch to block the dew. Fortunately, The depths of the white leaves forest were like spring, and there was no cold wind at night. Although this small campsite could not block the wind, it was still pretty good. At the break of dawn, Qin Yin finally awoke. She felt that her soul was full, and her entire person was once more in high spirits. To the side, Lin Muyu was boiling a pot of swan ni meat soup. Wu Tong and Zheng Jian had picked quite a few wild vegetables to cook together, and the taste seemed to be even better. A fragrance filled the surroundings, so much so that a few young wolves appeared in the forest, as if lured over by the fragrance. "It's a swift wolf." Wu Tong smiled. "What cute swift wolves. How long has it been since a swift wolf appeared in the white leaves forest?" Zheng Jian's gaze was gentle. "About 3,000 years. These 3 young wolves are so cute." Wu Tong chuckled, and his figure suddenly disappeared. In the next moment his 2 palms danced, slapping the 3 swift wolves to death. Carrying the corpses, he walked back and said with a smile, "Such cute swift wolves, the taste must be pretty good." Qin Yin, Lin Muyu. Not long after, the swan ni meat was cooked. The 4 of them had a hearty meal and prepared to set off. Lin Muyu did not summon Snowwalker again. It was fine to let it live in this forest for a few days. The deeper they went into the Heavenly Tome monolith forest, the more dangerous it would be. Although there were ice palms and fire fists guarding it, there was no guarantee that they would run into Luo Lan and the others. Lin Muyu did not want Snowwalker to follow in her father's footsteps and be slapped to death by Luo Lan's palm. After a night's rest, Lin Muyu's Do Qi and physical strength had recovered to their peak condition. Most of the injuries she had suffered the day before had also healed. Her combat strength had recovered to at least 90%. She was ready to adventure again. Maple trees, birch trees, and some unknown trees were everywhere in the dense forest. Moreover, there were natural stalagmites that broke through the soil in the fertile field. If one were to look closely at the material, one would realize that the stone tablets used to inscribe the heavenly tomes were made from these stalagmites. The 4 of them were not in a hurry. Right in front of them, a milky white stalagmite rose into the sky. It was about 100 meters tall and looked like a spectacle. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Zheng Jian smiled and explained, "All living things have spirits. In the white leaves forest, the rocks are the same. These rocks are the spirits of the mountains, just like the spirits in the air. They can grow on their own." Qin Yin was taken aback. She smiled and said, "You mean, stones can also grow?" Zheng Jian cupped his fists in a very serious manner and said, "Miss Qin Yin, the spirituality of stones comes from the earth element spirits. Stones originally came from the earth. Although the flame stone spirits are very slow and clumsy, they are also one of the most honest elements. Therefore, the heavenly tomes of the law of earth mostly exist as rock attacks. This the successor should understand." Lin Muyu naturally understood. He had used the low-grade earthly tomes of the law of rock to attack Luo Lan. He had almost made Luo Lan's chrysanthemum bloom. This scene was something he could never forget. Thus, he nodded and said, "Yes, as Zheng Jian said, stones can grow on their own." Qin Yin said cheerfully, "Oh, I know." Just like that, after they walked for a few kilometers, the number of stalagmites around them increased. It gave them the feeling that they had entered a stone forest. Suddenly, a powerful aura appeared in Lin Muyu's spirit pulse technique. However, these auras were fluctuating violently as if something had happened. "What's going on?" Wu Tong also sensed something. He clenched his fists and said, "I think we should pick up our pace. Something must have happened up ahead." The 4 of them leapt up together, and in the blink of an eye, they had traveled several kilometers. However, they could only hear miserable howls coming from up ahead. In the open space of the forest, behemoths with fiery red hair were lying there, howling. Some were already dead, while others had their arms and legs torn off, lying there waiting for death. "What's going on?" Lin Muyu was stunned. "Who did this, these behemoths?" "It's the red-headed behemoths," Wu Tong said in a low voice. "These behemoths are all spiritual beasts raised by the spiritual scholar. They assist him in guarding the heavenly tome forest of monoliths, but now they've been killed by someone. It's truly despicable. As far as Lin Muyu could see, there were at least 30 behemoths here. More than half of them were dead, while the rest were heavily injured and on the verge of death. Moreover, these behemoths' lifespans ranged from 12,000 to 15,000 years, so they were not weak. Who could have defeated the encirclement of so many red-headed behemoths and even killed so many of them? The answer was as clear as day. Besides Luolan, who else could it be? After examining the corpses of the red-headed behemoths, they saw that their spirit stones had already been plundered. There were even some behemoths that were not heavily injured, but had a hole in their head. Their spirit stones had been taken just like that, but their bodies had been left behind to wait for death. The miserable howls they let out were extremely unbearable. Zheng Jian said, "The bloodstains haven't completely dried up, so the intruder hasn't gone far. Let's hurry over. Perhaps the spiritual scholar needs our help. The intruder is too strong." Everyone rushed over with all their might. Along the way, they could see many earthly tome stone tablets, but no one had the intention to obtain the divine text. Lin Muyu's real target was the heavenly tome stone tablets in the deeper parts of the valley. Moreover, he was worried about the spiritual scholar, Su Hao's life and death, so he could not delay any longer. After traveling for about 5 kilometers, the sound of battle came from the front, and waves of divine energy enshrouded the valley. "We've arrived at the spiritual grains." Zheng Jian clenched his fists tightly and dashed over the grass. He said, "The spiritual scholar must have been attacked. God damn it, who are these people? Why are they so strong?" Lin Muyu quickened his pace and activated the falling star steps. He rushed into the valley like a meteor. When he arrived at the valley, he was shocked by the scene in the distance. The corpses of nearly 50 red-headed behemoths were lying on the ground. In the distance, more than 10 hunting ghost generals and red-headed behemoths were engaged in a fierce battle with a group of people. Perhaps those people weren't humans, but gods. Luolan was among them. Divine energy enshrouded her palm, and her face was full of smiles. Behind her was a group of disciples from the 7 world palaces, and there was no lack of Saint Realm cultivators among them. However, the one with the strongest killing intent in the group was a woman dressed in a fiery red dress. Golden divine energy flowed between her arms. She was actually another god realm cultivator? The woman in red suddenly struck out with one arm, and flames surrounded her arm. Her palm directly pierced through the head of a red-headed behemoth. In the next moment, the warm spirit stone was forcibly plucked out by her. Fresh blood flowed everywhere, but her face was full of a satisfied smile. Her palm shone with a resplendent golden light, and a mysterious force rapidly disintegrated the spirit stone. "Who?" The woman took a deep breath and absorbed the behemoth's spirit stone into her body. The satisfied expression on her face became even more exuberant, and she said with a smile, "Only the spirit beasts of the human world are so delicious. Wah! Luolan, you've made the right choice to bring me here." Luolan smiled respectfully. "As long as Dancing Flame Immortal is satisfied, you can enjoy all the spirit stones here." "Good." The woman in red smile became even wider. "Don't worry, I won't forget about your benefits. After we obtain the 8 great divine books of laws, I will naturally give you 2 or 3 of them." "Thank you, Dancing Flame Immortal." Luolan's face was full of smiles. At this time, a melodious flute sound suddenly came from the depths of the valley. In the distance, there were stone pillars carved with dragon patterns, and a handsome scholar sat on a white jade slab, playing the jade flute in his hand. The flute sound seemed to contain some kind of mysterious power, and the morale of the behemoths and hunting ghost generals, who were almost exhausted, was greatly boosted. They brandished their weapons and sharp claws and rushed towards Luolan and the others. "Scholarling, this person must be Su Hao. Truly hateful." Luolan sneered and said, "Men, go kill that weak scholar. He's the one who's causing trouble and ruined our plans. Go immediately." "Yes, venerable immortal." A Saint Realm First Layer disciple flew over with a long sword in hand, and raised his sword high up in the air. Suddenly, a towering wave of energy surged out from the long sword, and with a momentum that could split heaven and earth, the sword smashed down. Disciples of the 7 world palaces, each and every one of them had extraordinary skills. The flute sound stopped, and Scholar Ling suddenly opened his eyes, which shone with a faint green light. Suddenly, an iron fan appeared in his hand, and the golden divine runes carved on it glowed brightly. An indigo light shot up into the sky, and the energy of heaven and earth had already been drawn. It was a mid-grade heavenly book, The Law of Wind. Shwa. In the calm valley, countless invisible wind blades suddenly appeared, and in the blink of an eye, they gathered into a towering storm that swept out. What? The 7 world palaces' disciples in the air could not dodge in time, and their bodies abruptly shattered into pieces. As for Scholar Ling Su Hao, he lightly spun his iron fan, and the power of the heavenly book continued to wreak havoc. In an instant, 7 of the 7 world palaces' disciples were also shattered by the wind, and Luo Lan's expression was as ugly as it could be. Bastard! That red-robed girl roared in anger, and her pair of jade feet lightly stepped on the void, and she leaped into the air. She raised her tender arms, and a towering flame condensed in them as she said indifferently, "Break for me." Boom! The flame and the storm collided, and the sound of explosions rang out incessantly. The strong wind blew the entire valley into a purgatory. Successor, be careful. Wu Tong hurriedly stood in front of Lin Muyu, and with an ice palm he blocked the stones that were blown over by the strong wind. Lin Muyu narrowed her eyes. She was not afraid of this kind of attack, but she was extremely worried about Scholar Ling. She asked indifferently, "Who is that girl?" "A god king realm mid-god." Wu Tong replied indifferently, his eyes filled with battle intent. Chapter 530. Ouyang Yan, the divine monarch of fire dance, the god of truth from the heaven realm. At this time, Ouyang Yan's palms were filled with towering flames that seemed to illuminate the sky. This was not the power of the mortal realm. This was the power of a god, a real god. She was dressed in a fiery red muslin dress, and her mature and graceful figure was faintly discernible. She was extremely enchanting, and Ouyang Yan's appearance was like that of a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. Unfortunately, her beautiful face carried a vicious aura that did not match her appearance. The flame in her palm burned even more intensely. She looked charmingly at Su Hao, who was on the stone pillar, and smiled. "It's rare to see such a handsome scholar. Unfortunately, for the sake of the heavenly book, you must die here today. I don't have time to enjoy you anymore." The flames surged and rushed down like a torrential river. The divine monarch's flame power seemed to condense into magma. The impact and destructive power were not something that the mortal realm's flames could compare with. Su Hao's clear eyes widened, and he said lightly, "Ouyang Yan, don't go too far." With that, Su Hao suddenly flipped the jade flute in his hand. Suddenly, the divine text engraved at the bottom of the jade flute glowed with a golden luster. There were a total of 7 lines of divine text. No one knew how the divine text was engraved. For a moment, a faint golden light soared into the sky, instantly triggering the powerful heaven and earth force. Lin Muyu's heart sank. A low-grade divine book. My God! The jade flute in Scholar Ling's hand was actually the carrier of a low-grade divine book. This was a low-grade spiritual book embryo of the law of space. Golden rays of light swirled rapidly and formed a huge circular invisible shield nearly 100 meters around Su Hao with a buzzing sound. Venerable immortal flaming dance, Ouyang Yan's flame impact hit the shield with a bang 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 sound but was unable to shake it. This was the power of a divine book. At this time, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had arrived at the hillside together. They frowned as they watched the battle in the valley. "It seems that Scholar Ling doesn't need our help," Lin Muyu said. "No." Zheng Jian clenched his fists and said, "Even if it's a divine tome, it won't be able to last for too long. It'll take at most 30 minutes for the power of this inferior divine tome to be exhausted. At that time, I'm afraid that Scholar Ling won't be able to fight against so many people." He won't be a match for Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan at all. Lin Muyu nodded. We'll wait for an opportunity. Ouyang Yen stepped in the void, her skirt fluttering, revealing a pair of slender, snow-white legs. She didn't care about anything else at all. She circulated fire-attributed god force from her palms and bombarded Scholarling's law of space barrier. She turned to Luo Lan and shouted, Luo Lan, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for me to exhaust my god force? I wouldn't dare. Luo Lan cupped her fists respectfully and shouted, Disciples of the 7 world palaces, listen up. Attack Scholar Ling together, now. Instantly, close to 100 disciples from the 7 world palaces brandished their weapons. For a moment, the air was filled with dazzling light as weapons danced in the air. Long swords, battle axes, and spears pierced through the air, causing golden ripples to form on Scholarling's divine tome barrier. At this moment, the golden barrier's outer appearance was revealed. It was exceptionally resplendent. What a soul-stirring battle! Qin Yin was dumbfounded. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. She couldn't help but feel her confidence take a heavy blow. This kind of battle was something she would never be able to experience in her entire life, right? Lin Muyu could sense Qin Yin's dismay. That's right, how could mortals hope to experience such a battle? Even Lin Muyu felt a little dispirited in her heart, let alone Qin Yin. He couldn't help but hold on to Qin Yin's dainty hand as he softly laughed. It's all right, as long as we continue to cultivate and improve, we will also ascend to godhood one day. Qin Yin's beautiful eyes reignited with hope as she nodded with a smile, we will. At this moment, in less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the golden spatial barrier formed by the low-grade divine tome was already on the verge of breaking apart. It had absorbed too much energy, causing cracks to appear on its surface, and it looked like it was about to collapse. If Scholar Ling didn't have a second divine tome to defend against Ouyang Yen, he would most likely be buried under Ouyang Yan's divine flames. Clang. Lin Muyu pulled out her stellar sword and said in a low voice, Wu Tong, Zheng Jian, we're preparing to attack. Xiao Yin, be careful. Then, yes, successor. The 4 of them dashed down the mountain and headed straight for the battlefield. Lin Muyu was the fastest with the falling star step, and she fell down the mountain like a green meteor. Just as Scholar Ling's golden barrier disappeared, Lin Muyu landed in front of him with a bang. The tattered hunter's cloak fluttered behind her, and she brandished her stellar sword with a dazzling radiance. The 7 luminaries' celestial sword instantly formed, and as Lin Muyu waved her long sword, a golden dragon blood battle shield instantly formed in the air, replacing the defensive power of the heavenly tome. Buzz. Seeing the golden dragon blood battle shield forming in front of her, Ouyang Yen, who was in the air, was also stunned. Her beautiful eyes looked through the dragon blood battle shield and saw that the young man wielding the sword was actually an extremely handsome swordsman. Moreover, his eyes revealed a determination and arrogance that Scholar Ling didn't have. This was a handsome man with a completely different temperament from Scholar Ling. In an instant, Ouyang Yan's heart trembled. Holding a raging flame in her palm, she indifferently said, Young man, who are you? Lin Muyu raised her head to look at her, and the hostility between her brows became even stronger. She said, The person who guards the heavenly tome monolith forest. Ouyang Yen, I advise you to stop. As a god of the heavenly realm, you actually participate in the struggles of the mortal realm. You are truly a disgrace to the heavenly realm. What did you say? Ouyang Yan's phoenix eyes narrowed and she said, Do you think I want to come to the mortal realm? If you have the guts, say it again. Lin Muyu still raised her head to look at her, only to see the violent wind formed by the king's battle flame blowing Ouyang Yan's skirt wildly. Lin Muyu said, As a god, you must have the dignity of a god. As a god, you wear pink underwear and fight here. What kind of propriety is that? Ouyang Yen was about to explode. She actually let this brat see the color of her underwear today. It was simply too embarrassing. In an instant, Ouyang Yan's heart once again began to thump. This brat's words were so wild, it was truly likable. Unfortunately, He was Scholar Ling's man. Today, for the divine book, she must kill him. Young man. Ouyang Yen calmed the anger in her heart and said indifferently, "If you leave now, I can spare your life. If you insist on being my enemy, then today, you will become one of the corpses here." Lin Muyu did not speak. Luo Lan said with a face full of anger, "Dancing Flame Immortal, you don't need to talk nonsense with him. This brat is the Empire's valiant Dragon Legion's commander, Lin Muyu, our old enemy. Look at the star's sword in his hand. It is the substandard divine weapon that I gave you, but he took away." "Is that so?" Ouyang Yan's beautiful face twisted and she said, "Good. Today, I must be ruthless." Flames danced wildly in the air. Ouyang Yan was a god of fire law, and her comprehension of fire was probably higher than Fire Fist Zhengjian's. She gently raised her arms and suddenly waved them. Thousands of flames fell from the sky, directly rushing towards Lin Muyu's dragon blood shield. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of explosions did not stop, and in the blink of an eye, Lin Muyu's blood was boiling, and she vomited a mouthful of blood. Fighting against such a level of opponent, it was good enough that she was not instantly killed. How could she resist? The dragon blood shield was shattered before it could even finish eating this move. Lin Muyu was forced to take several steps back, and she fell beside Scholar Ling miserably. "Successor!" Zheng Jian quickly went forward to help her up. Scholar Ling was shocked. "Zheng Jian, he is the successor?" "That's right, he has a portion of Emperor God Fushi's divine power." "Oh my god! We have finally waited for Fushi's successor?" Scholar Ling was surprised. At this time, Wu Tong had already waved his palm and rushed towards Ouyang Yan in the air. The light of his ice palm exploded, and it collided with Ouyang Yan's divine fire. The explosion of energy shook the entire valley. But after 7 or 8 moves, Wu Tong was already at a disadvantage, and even the clothes on his arm were burned by Ouyang Yan's divine king. "Let me help you." Zheng Jian rose from the ground, and his fiery fist smashed towards Ouyang Yan. "You came at the right time." Ouyang Yan was a madwoman. The stronger her opponent, the more excited she became. Her palms were filled with raging flames, and she wasn't at a disadvantage even when fighting 1 against 2. "Kill, clean up all the hunting ghost generals and behemoths." Luo Lan freed her hand and gave an order. Together with the other disciples, they began to clear the spirit beasts that Scholar Ling had raised. Lin Muyu barely managed to calm the surging blood and qi in her body. She stood up and used the star's sword to support her body. She raised her head and looked at the scene of Ice Palm and Fire Fist fighting against Dancing Flame God King. They couldn't decide who was stronger in a short period of time, so she raised her sword. She had to stop Luo Lan and the others. Once the 7 world palaces got rid of Scholar Ling's strength, her side would have no chance of victory. "Successor!" Scholar Ling seemed to have seen through Lin Muyu's thoughts and said, "Successor doesn't have to worry. This place can be given to Ouyang Yan and Luo Lan. Successor must not take any risks." "Oh?" Lin Muyu was surprised. Scholar Ling's lips curled into a faint smile, and he said, "You and this lady, come to my side. In a while I will call Wu Tong and Zheng Jian back, and we will go to the Heavenly Book Shrine 5 kilometers away. Let them have this place." Lin Muyu's thoughts were meticulous, and she had already guessed that Scholar Ling definitely had a high-level teleportation Heavenly Book of the Law of Space. Holding the star's sword, she stood to the side to protect Scholar Ling. Meanwhile, Qin Yin had already unsheathed her heaven-subduing sword, and the true dragon god binding chains revolved around her, ready to enter the battle at any time. Right at this moment, Ouyang Yan, who was fighting the Ice Palm and Fire Fist in the air, actually had the time to look over. She discovered Qin Yin beside Scholar Ling, and her body instantly trembled. Her face turned pale, and she thought to herself, "This girl actually has such a peerless beauty, even above mine. How can I allow her to live in this world?" "Wu Tong, Zheng Jian, come back!" Lin Muyu suddenly shouted. In the air, Wu Tong and Zheng Jian took the opportunity to catch their breaths, and they leaped back to the ground. At the same time, they blasted the power of several Ice Palm and Fire Fist at Ouyang Yan, who was in the air, and forced her to retreat. Scholar Ling waved his hand lightly, and a golden dagger appeared. A golden ray of light soared into the sky, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth. It was another low-grade heavenly book. Buzz. The surrounding white waves of air swirled rapidly, as if some kind of mechanism was activated. The next moment, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin only saw a flash of light in front of their eyes, and the few of them had already appeared in a dark hall from the fierce battle in the valley. Heavenly Book Shrine. Chapter 5:31. The entire Heavenly Book Shrine didn't have a roof. It was just a circular shrine that was surrounded by huge stone pillars. The ground of the shrine was carved out of a huge rock. Rays of golden light enshrouded it. In the surroundings of the shrine, there were a total of 8 golden stone tablets that were glowing with a faint glow. Divine characters were flashing on them. Clearly, they were the legendary divine character stone tablets. That is a divine book? Qin Yin asked with her beautiful eyes wide open. Wu Tong nodded. Yes. Spiritual Scholar turned around and cupped his fists respectfully. Successor, although the Heavenly Book Shrine has an illusion restriction, with God King Huo Wu's abilities, she definitely won't be able to resist her for long. We can't stay here for long. Successor, please immediately comprehend the divine books on the stone tablets. These divine books are priceless treasures that God Emperor Fuxi left for you and the Shattered Cauldron realm. There are a total of 8 stone tablets here, and they record the 8 laws of wind, fire, thunder, earth, ice, light, life, and space. Successor, there is no need to say much. Please immediately read and comprehend them. Our time is very limited. Then got it. Lin Muyu quickly arrived in front of a divine book stone tablet. It was a divine character of the law of fire. The oracle bone inscriptions on it were glowing with a faint golden glow. There were no labels, so Lin Muyu had to divide the sections by herself. There were more than 1,000 long and short inscriptions. This was truly a little terrifying. The divine books were indeed much longer and more complicated than the earthly book and heavenly book. Shua. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense entered the stone tablet. One by one, the golden inscriptions flew past her mind. It was as though they were imprinted in her mind. As she read them word by word, her surroundings suddenly turned into a sea of fire. There were ashes everywhere. Between heaven and earth, there were only surging flames and torrential flames. Living beings were wailing and crying. Above the sky, a beam of fire descended. It was a sovereign god emperor, fire god. When the fire god general raised the sharp sword in his hand high up in the air, raging flames quickly swept across the land, destroying the entire plain. Lin Muyu suddenly let out a miserable howl and stumbled back a few steps. A paragraph of divine text seeped into his eye, and was hard to forget. The stone tablet slowly cracked, and a wisp of flame contained within the stone tablet lingered around Lin Muyu. Then, it slowly merged with his fighting flame. Lin Muyu only felt an unimaginable sense of exhaustion. He couldn't help but murmur, Fire Attribute Divine Book? Fire God Armageddon? Qin Yin gently held his arm and asked with concern, Have you comprehended it? N. Lin Muyu gently hugged Qin Yin's shoulder and said, Xiao Yin, help me to the other stone tablet. I still have some spiritual energy left, so I should be able to comprehend another one. All right. The two of them stepped on the blue stone and came before another stone tablet. It was a wind element divine tome. Lin Muyu forced herself to focus her gaze on the divine text, and her spiritual perception quickly flew into the stone tablet. Just like before, she soon entered the illusory realm created by the divine tome. Strong winds howled in the surroundings, and tornadoes raged between the heavens and earth, tearing the cities apart and crushing the residences of the common people. The land was filled with wails and cries. Wind element divine tome, storm dragon spin. In the blink of an eye, nearly 1,200 divine characters of storm dragon spin were imprinted in Lin Muyu's heart, and the golden stone tablet also shattered with a crack. Lin Muyu took a deep breath, and his entire body was filled with fatigue. At this time, A faint golden luster had already appeared on his beer. Scholar Ling looked at him in surprise and said, "Heir, you comprehended the divine power of 2 divine books in one go. I'm afraid your strength is not enough. Don't force yourself anymore? 2 hours have passed, and we don't have much time left. I'm afraid God Monarch Wu will bring people here soon." "It's already been 2 hours?" Lin Muyu was shocked. He never thought that a short moment in Lin Muyu's eyes would take so long. He frowned and said, "Can these divine writings be taken away?" Scholar Ling said, "You can make a rubbing and take it away, but the rubbing can only take away the surface of the divine text. The guiding divine power left behind by God Emperor Fuxi in the stone tablet cannot be obtained. Even if you obtain the complete divine text, unless you are a genius, I'm afraid it will be difficult to write it into a divine book. At most, it will be a heavenly book or an earthly book." Lin Muyu nodded. "Is there a way to delay Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan?" Scholar Ling frowned and said, "There is an extremely powerful existence imprisoned in the mountain beside the divine book shrine, the Beeman King. Back then, God Emperor Fuxi spent a lot of effort to tame him. But these years, without the deterrence of Fuxi's divine power, the Beeman King has become increasingly violent and no longer listens to his subordinates' orders. If the heir really has Fuxi's divine power, don't give it a try. The Beeman King might submit again." "All right then, bring me there." "Yes." When passing by a divine book stone tablet, Lin Muyu glanced at it. It was a divine book of the law of light. He said, "Xiao Yin, read this stone tablet here and try to comprehend it. Wait for me to come back. If there are any divine texts that you don't understand, I will teach you later." "Then, all right then." Qin Yin originally wanted to see the Beeman King, but for the sake of the divine book, she had no choice. On the side of the mountain rock, lines of intersecting runes appeared. Wu Tong walked forward and lightly pressed his palm on the giant rock. With a low shout, a door opened. It was actually a secret chamber. When the door was opened, a fishy and rotten smell wafted over. Furthermore, Lin Muyu's spirit pulse technique immediately had an intense reaction. The aura power in front of them was extraordinarily strong. It was even stronger than Scholar Ling, Ice Palm Fire Fist, and the intensity of the aura power was not inferior to Ouyang Yan's. Walking down the damp and cold stone steps, Jing Jian raised his hand and lit a torch. He held the torch and walked in front, illuminating Lin Muyu, Scholar Ling, and the others. The path in the cave wasn't too far away. However, when Lin Muyu took a closer look, she realized that the 2 sides of the stone path were actually suspended in the air. Looking over, it was as though she could see the stars in the sky. Scholar Ling saw this and couldn't help but laugh. "Successor, this is an illusion left behind by God Emperor Fuxi. It is called the Star Vast Realm. It can seal all powers, so although the Beeman King is strong, he is unable to show off his might here. The Star Vast Realm can see through tens of thousands of stars in the celestial domain. However, don't fall down. This illusion leads directly to the purgatory plane." Oh! Lin Muyu couldn't help but be speechless. This place was too dangerous. The suspended stone path extended into the distance and directly connected to a punishment platform that was carved out of a giant rock. On the punishment platform, there was a giant beast kneeling. Its body was no different from the Beeman King, but the hair on its head was indeed golden. Its hands were pierced by chains and it was hung between 2 giant stone pillars. There were many runes circulating on the chains. If it wasn't for these runes, it probably wouldn't have been able to seal such a strong Beeman King. Sha, Wu Tong and Jing Jian walked in front, one on the left and one on the right. They stepped onto the giant rock and split up. Jing Jian was hot-tempered and he hollered, "Beeman King, raise your head." However, the Beeman King, who had his head lowered, didn't raise it. Instead, his hands that were locked extended out sharp claws. The sharp claws gave off a chilling glow under the starlight. The Beeman King's voice was a little hoarse. He didn't even raise his head and smiled. "Ice Palm and Fire Fist, what are you doing here? Aren't you afraid that I will tear you apart?" "Afraid, of course I am." Jing Jian clenched his fist and said, "However, you are locked up now. I can let you have a taste of my fist. The Demon King laughed coldly. You rats only know how to take advantage of others. If I can get out, I will definitely cut you into pieces. Umph. Scholar Ling held an iron fan in his hand and opened it with a schwa sound. The ribs of the fan were suffused with faint divine light. He said, Demon King, you don't know what's good for you. Raise your dog head. The successor of His Majesty God Emperor Fuxi is already here. If you dare to be so disrespectful, don't blame me for chopping off your dog head. Ah, the Demon King's lowered body suddenly trembled. He slowly raised his head. It was a face that was filled with a ruthless aura. He looked at Lin Muyu and couldn't help but laugh loudly. His laughter was filled with penetrating power and was extremely arrogant and unruly. This weak kid? Impossible. His Majesty God Emperor would never allow such a weak kid to be his successor. Impudent! Scholar Ling shouted in a low voice. His Majesty's successor is right here. Don't be so arrogant. As he said that, he signaled to Lin Muyu that it was time to show off his strength. Lin Muyu nodded her head and hollered. The king battle flames surged around her body. At the same time, she opened her fingers and streaks of golden Fuxi god power flowed in her palm. Instantly, the entire star vast habitat seemed to be affected by Fuxi's god power, causing it to twist slightly. There were even many giant stars in the sky that started to descend. Along with many meteors flying around, the star vast habitat instantly became a dangerous place. But the Demon King knelt there in shock. His hands couldn't move at all. He could only raise his head and look at the successor of God Emperor Fuxi. Wu Tong frowned and said, Star vast habitat is about to be destroyed. Scholar Ling, quickly remove the seal on the Demon King. Let's head out and talk. Anyway, the successor is here and we aren't afraid that the Demon King will go berserk once more. The spiritual scholar, Su Hao, gently waved his iron-boned fan. Immediately, the golden sealing runes on the Demon King's shackles dispersed one by one. With a kacha sound, the iron chains that shackled the Demon King's arms cracked and disappeared. Hua! The Demon King took in a deep breath like he was relieved of a huge burden. He still knelt there. Along with the trembling of the star vast habitat, his body also trembled. He raised his head and a fierce glow appeared in his eyes. As if Scholar Ling had seen through Zhongyu's thoughts, he said, If you want to kill the inheritor, then go ahead. But you must know that if you hurt the inheritor, no matter where you run, the Fuxi celestial monarch of the human realm beyond heavens will find you and turn you into ashes. He will also annihilate your beaming celestial race and make you disappear from the universe. The Demon King shuddered and the fierceness in his eyes disappeared. Very quickly, he knelt on the ground like a tamed dog. I, the king of the Demon race, is willing to listen to the successor's orders. I have no regrets. Lin Muyu smiled. Let's head out first. But Chapter 5:32. Hong Hong Hong. When the five of them flew out of the cave, the star vast habitat behind them exploded. The entire star vast habitat had been destroyed by Lin Muyu's Fuxi power. Rumbling sounds spread out from within the mountain. In the blink of an eye, the entire mountain range collapsed and turned into a deep abyss. Looking down, one couldn't see the bottom at all. What is it? Qin Yin quickly went up and asked with concern. Her eyes landed on the Demon King behind Lin Muyu and she became wary. What is that? It's okay. Lin Muyu grabbed her soft little hand and asked, How many words do you not know? 128. Oh my God, there are over 1,000 words and you don't recognize so many of them. Qin Yin pouted, feeling extremely wronged as she said, I've only studied the divine text for less than 2 months. Ever since the heavenly imperial gate was sealed, all of the heavenly tomes lost their effectiveness, and the divine text teachers on the continent were immediately frozen and disintegrated, so besides those heavenly tomes families, no one else studies the divine text. Okay. Lin Muyu smiled. Let me teach you the divine writings first. Then Qin Yin smiled and nodded her head. Ling Shu said, What will the Beeman King do? Lin Muyu turned around and looked at the Beeman King. Beeman King. The Beeman King knelt down obediently. I will listen to your orders. Lin Muyu said, you and Ice Palm and Fire Fist will go against the enemy. You have to block Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan. Do you understand? God? The Beeman King suddenly became excited, his eyes filled with killing intent. He smiled. There are actually gods in the mortal world? That's great, that's great. Wu Tong, Zheng Jian, the two of you trash, bring me to fight the enemy. Wu Tong and Zheng Jian were so furious that they wanted to beat him up. However, the Beeman King was too strong. Even if the two of them worked together, they might not be his match. They could only swallow their anger and nod their heads. They cupped their fists towards Lin Muyu and the three of them left the Heavenly Book God Hall. Within 10 minutes, Lin Muyu had taught Qin in all the oracle bone inscriptions that she did not understand. Then, she found another stone tablet and began to comprehend the third book. Divine Book of the Law of Life, Revival of the Gods. When Lin Muyu finished reading the divine text, her state of mind quickly entered the illusion brought by the divine text. A desolate land was filled with raging flames and destruction. Countless forests were being ravaged by the flames of war and heavenly flames. The forests were burning, and the common people were crying. Countless people who were seriously ill or seriously injured were struggling at death's door in the mud. At this moment, heavy rain started to fall from the sky. The sky was filled with dense divine light as a 36E Dominator God Emperor appeared above the clouds. Her beautiful eyes were filled with compassion. She held a bamboo flute in her hand and gently blew it. The land that was being destroyed was moved. In an instant, countless raindrops containing healing sacred light fell on the mortal world. The heavenly flames were extinguished, and the injuries of the living beings on the ground rapidly healed. Auspicious clouds appeared in the sky, and the mortal world was healed in the blink of an eye. The goddess of life smiled as she looked at the mortal world. She put down the bamboo flute and lightly stepped on the void. She brought the trembling 36E towards the heaven realm. Swish! An imprint was branded on Lin Muyu's heart. She had also comprehended the divine book of the law of life. But at this time, Lin Muyu's heart was filled with fatigue. Her forehead was covered with sweat. Successor, don't force yourself anymore. The spirit scholar couldn't bear to watch from the side. He said, I only comprehend one divine book every 3,000 years. You have already comprehended 3 divine books in just a few hours. That's enough, don't force yourself anymore. However, Lin Muyu knew that she could not let go of this precious opportunity. Otherwise, she might not have such an opportunity in the future. She forced herself to stand up and said, I'm fine. Let me rest for a few minutes. I need to comprehend 4 godly tomes before I can leave. Scholarling, go and copy the remaining 3 godly tomes for me. If we can't bring these godly tomes away, we can only destroy them. The spirit scholar cupped his fists and said, I understand. Even if we can't use these divine books for ourselves, we definitely can't let Ouyang Yen, Luo Lan, or the other fierce gods obtain them. That's right. When the spirit scholar went to copy the other 3 divine books, Lin Muyu had already arrived in front of the tablet of the 4th divine book. It was a divine book of the law of thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning were the most difficult force to control. Presumably, it wouldn't be easy to comprehend the divine book of the law of thunder and lightning. At this time, Lin Muyu had a new understanding of the divine books. The divine books were like scrolls. Just like in those fantasy stories, activating the scrolls would bring about great power. On the other hand, the divine books were like the forbidden spells in the fantasy world. A divine book was the carrier of the forbidden spells. In the future, the Shattered Cauldron realm would be a battle between the forbidden spells. Pa pa pa. When Lin Muyu's palm covered the stone tablet, a bolt of lightning slowly flowed through. It seemed that this stone tablet originally contained some thunder divine power. When she turned around, she saw Qin Yin concentrating on studying the more than 1,000 words of the law of light divine text. She didn't know if she could comprehend it. If she couldn't, She could only copy it down and study it properly when she returned to Lanyan City. In the blink of an eye, countless bolts of lightning had already appeared in Lin Muyu's Yihai. Bolts of lightning rained down on the undulating Yihai. Thunder elemental law, raging thunder purgatory. There were more and more lightning bolts in the Yihai. After an unknown period of time, the illusion of purgatory appeared in Lin Muyu's Yihai. In a fiery red purgatory, evil spirits howled and ownerless souls cried incessantly. Countless bolts of lightning flashed and fell from the sky, forming a destructive lightning net. It was as if the entire purgatory was going to be destroyed. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense stood in the purgatory. Scorching tornadoes of lightning swept across her face, causing her cloak to whistle. It was really a little scary. After enduring an unknown amount of violent lightning, finally, the Yihai gradually calmed down. The violent power quickly rushed into Lin Muyu's beer. The stone tablet shattered, and Lin Muyu knelt on the ground. Comprehending 4 divine books in a row had far exceeded the endurance of her soul, and she quickly fainted. On the side, Qin Yin stood there in a daze, surrounded by a golden light. She had entered the critical stage of the divine book of the law of light, holy light brilliance. Less than 10 seconds after Lin Muyu fainted, the stone tablet in front of her broke into 2 with a crack. The divine power in the stone tablet flowed into her body. She also comprehended it and fainted. Sigh. Ling Shu looked at Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, who had fainted on the ground and couldn't help but feel helpless. He said, "What should we do? I don't know if the Beeman King and the others can resist Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan. What should we do? The successor and this young lady are also unconscious. What should we do? What should we do?" At this moment, a loud noise came from outside the heavenly book shrine. A giant Beeman beast waved its sharp claws and rushed in. It shouted at Ling Shu from afar, but no one knew what it was saying. Ling Shu frowned. "What? Luo Lan has already brought people over? They are a mile away? Oh my god." Ling Shu clenched his teeth. "We can't wait any longer. We must destroy this place and bring the successor away." As he spoke, he pounced forward and waved his iron-boned fan. His battle energy flew out and smashed the remaining 3 divine tomes. He turned around and carried Lin Muyu and Qin Yin to the center of the shrine. Another cyan iron-boned fan appeared in his hand. As he waved it slowly, he drew the power of heaven and earth. It was a middle-grade heavenly book of the law of space. Swoosh! Air currents swirled and the 3 of them disappeared from where they stood. The giant Beeman beast was stunned. It extended its sharp claws in the direction of Ling Shu as if it was saying, "Wait for master, what about me?" Behind him, a crack appeared in the space. Luo Lan, who was wearing a long robe, appeared in the sky. She looked at the broken divine tomes and cursed angrily, "I'm too late again. Ling Shu, you bastard. I will definitely tear you into pieces." The giant Beeman beast roared angrily at Luo Lan, who was in the sky. "Little worm, you want to kill me?" Luo Lan was frustrated that she had nowhere to vent her anger. She raised her hand and sent a palm strike at the Beeman beast. The poor Beeman beast couldn't even withstand a single blow and was instantly smashed into pieces. At this time, a large number of disciples from the 7 world palaces rushed into the valley. All of them stared dumbfoundedly at the destroyed mountain range and the heavenly book shrine. Lu Zhan slowly walked forward and said, "Master, the forest of divine tomes is gone. The 8 divine tomes are all in ruins. We are still too late." Luo Lan snorted coldly. Ling Shu used the heavenly book of the law of space to escape. He can't have gone far. Chase after him. Right at this moment, another disciple stood in front of a stone stele and said, "Master, look, there's a piece of divine scripture that hasn't been completely destroyed here. It's the laws of light, but it's broken into 2. If we glue it back together, then perhaps we'll be able to form a complete divine scripture." "Is that so?" Luo Lan's heart skipped a beat and she said happily, "Quick, stick the stone tablet back together and bring it back to the 7 world palaces." "Yes, master." Lu Zhan furrowed his brows and said, "Master, The dancing fire god monarch Ouyang Yen is still fighting with the Beeman King and the ice palm fire fist outside the valley. Should we go help her? If Ouyang Yen is killed, I'm afraid it would be a great loss to our Iha country. Luo Lan snorted coldly and said, Ouyang Yen is naturally arrogant. She's just a crippled god whose godhood was stolen. After descending into the human world, she actually surpassed me. How hateful. Let her fight. It's best if she dies, but even if she doesn't die, it won't be any better. The news about this piece of divine text must be kept a secret. Ouyang Yen cannot know about it. Do you understand? Yes, disciple understands. Chapter 5:33. In a gloomy and cold bare cave, the light of a jade pendant slowly flowed, illuminating the cave. Scholar Ling's entire body was trembling, his arms hugging his knees as he sat there. His expression was rather tired, and his once handsome face was already lined with wrinkles. His black hair was already beginning to turn white. To the side, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin lay side by side, their bodies covered by a bare skin. The two were still sleeping, and this was already the 7th day. Lin Muyu slowly awoke from her unconsciousness. When she opened her eyes, she saw the gradually aging appearance of Scholar Ling. Successor, you're finally awake. Scholar Ling excitedly exclaimed. How did you? Lin Muyu was dumbfounded. Su Hao, how did you become like this? Scholar Ling awkwardly replied, in order to avoid the pursuit of God King Hua Wu and Luo Lan, we could only bring you to the edge of the heavenly tome monolith forest. The divine power of the time seal here is already rather weak, so this subordinate's life is quickly fading. Reverting to my old appearance is to be expected. After all, I've already lived for more than 10,000 years. Divine power of the time seal? Lin Muyu could not help but ask, if I use Fushi's divine power, can I restore your appearance? Perhaps. Scholar Ling also did not know the result. But it's best to leave the successor's divine power for him to use. This subordinate cannot waste the successor's divine power. Lin Muyu left no room for doubt as she stopped him. Just sit quietly. As she spoke, Lin Muyu sat cross-legged and gave a soft cry. Instantly, golden light exploded from her body. Fushi's divine power flew out from her body and into Scholar Ling like a ribbon. Strands of it seeped into Scholar Ling's sea of consciousness, and a miraculous sight occurred. Scholar Ling's grizzled hair gradually returned to black, and the wrinkles on his face also slowly lessened. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and continued to use his divine power to heal Scholar Ling's old age. He was completely unaware that Qin Yin had also woken up and was staring at him with her beautiful eyes wide open. Not long after, Scholar Ling regained his appearance from 7 days ago. He knelt down joyfully and said, "Thank you, successor, for using your power to heal me." "You're welcome." Lin Muyu turned around and saw Qin Yin. She couldn't help but smile. "Xiao Yin, you're awake too. How do you feel now?" After absorbing the power of the divine book, Qin Yin's cultivation and state of mind had improved greatly. She smiled and replied, "It's very good. I feel that my cultivation has improved." "That's good." Lin Muyu asked, "Scholar Ling, how many days have we been hiding here?" Scholar Ling replied, 7 days and 7 nights. "So long." Lin Muyu couldn't help but knit her brows and said, "How are the Beeman King, Wu Tong and Jing Jian?" "They're all right." Scholar Ling sat cross-legged and said respectfully, "Before God Emperor Fushi ascended to the sky beyond heaven, he placed a restriction on us. We can feel each other's life force. They're only seriously injured and not in danger of dying." On the other hand, Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan's subordinates suffered heavy losses. Many of their divine domain experts died. They really deserved it. Lin Muyu said, "They should have taken away many of the heavenly books, right?" Scholar Ling replied truthfully, "Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan made a total of 13 heavenly books, over 30 earthly books, and countless spiritual books and human books from the heavenly book forest. However, they were just rubbings. Even if they were given to a specialist to study, the chances of them becoming a book would be very low. The heavenly books were created by God Emperor Fuxi, so it's not that easy to become a book. Lin Muyu said worriedly, it seems like a heavenly book war between the Empire and the Iha country is unavoidable. Qin Yi nodded her head and said nothing. Scholar Ling smiled and said, Successor, you don't have to worry too much. The heavenly books that you've comprehended are all-encompassing. As long as you learn the heavenly books, you'll be able to inscribe the heavenly books and earthly books of the same law. A heavenly book already contains all the heavenly books of the same law, so successor just needs to properly study the heavenly books of the 8 laws. Yes, that's great. Lin Muyu said, have Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan's men left yet? They couldn't find us. They left the White Leaves Forest 3 days ago. Scholar Ling cupped his fists and said, Successor, it's already safe outside. Let's go out. This subordinate needs some time to rebuild the Heavenly Book Forest defenses. I believe that the cultivators of this continent will come endlessly to cause trouble for the Heavenly Book Forest. The 3 of them crawled out of the cave. This bare cave was dozens of meters deep. It was no wonder that Luo Lan, Ouyang Yen, and the others couldn't find them. It must have been difficult for Scholar Ling to find such a place to hide. Within the White Leaves Forest, there were smashed spiritual tomes and human tomes everywhere. Those who saw it could not help but feel a little ashamed. Humans should be most proficient in destruction. The Heavenly Book Forest of monoliths that Fuxi had painstakingly left behind had actually been mostly destroyed after this battle. Scholar Ling's heart ached, and his eyes were filled with sorrow. They didn't walk too far before the sharp howls of experts could be heard in the distance. In the next moment, 3 figures appeared in the forest. They were the Beeman King, Wu Tong, and Jing Jian. This subordinate pays his respects to Successor. Successor is fine. This is truly great. Zheng Jian said respectfully. The Beeman King was also kneeling on the ground. There was a huge burn wound on his shoulder, which had scorched his hair. There was even a wound on his shoulder that had burst open and flowed with fresh blood. Presumably, this was the masterpiece that Ouyang Yen had left behind. Lin Muyu nodded. Is everyone all right? We're fine. Lin Muyu walked forward and took out a bottle of first-grade healing medicine from her cosmos sack. She handed it to the Beeman King and said, This bottle of medicine can heal your injuries. Use it immediately. The injury caused by Ouyang Yan's godly power can't be healed with ordinary medicine. Many thanks, Successor. The Beeman King received the healing medicine with some suspicion. Probably when God Emperor Fuxi was in the mortal realm, he had not been so kind to him. When the healing medicine was poured on his wound, a cool and comfortable feeling came from his wound. The Beeman King could not help but let out a gasp. A rather obvious healing feeling came from his wound. This was indeed a good medicine. He could not help but kowtow again and said, Many thanks, Successor. You're welcome. Lin Muyu looked at the 4 people and said, Xiao Yin and I are about to leave the White Leaves Forest. You guys continue to guard the Heavenly Book Forest. You must take care of yourselves and cultivate as much as possible. When you step into the deity realm, come find me in Lanyan City. Understood? Yes, Successor. Go! The 4 people turned around reluctantly, especially the Beeman King. He actually turned his head back to look at Lin Muyu. It was not easy for him to meet such a benevolent master. In the blink of an eye, he was about to part with her. He was quite reluctant. Thinking about it, Fuxi must have beaten the Beeman King many times in the past because of his violent temperament. Not long after, the treading snow warhorse charged out of the forest and happily paced back and forth beside its master. Lin Muyu laughed heartily and caressed Treading Snow's long face. She stroked its fur and said, Consider yourself lucky that you did not get eaten by the Beeman these past few days. Treading Snow let out a long neigh and stood on its hind legs. It seemed to be saying that it ran fast and the Beeman could not catch up. After resting for a while and eating, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin changed into a new set of hunter's clothes. He then mounted the horse and extended his hand to Qin Yin. He smiled and said, It seems that before we return to White Leaf City, we can only ride on the same horse. Qin Yin blushed and very quickly mounted the horse and sat in Lin Muyu's embrace. She immediately felt very safe. The warhorse neighed and in the blink of an eye, galloped out of the heavenly tome monolith forest. Hiya! Hiya! The sound of horses galloping came from outside the heavenly tome monolith forest. It was a group of Iha Empire mercenaries carrying battle axes, longbows, and other weapons. This group of people had probably just received the news of the heavenly tome monolith forest and had come to die. Many of the demons that Ling Scholar had tamed in the heavenly tome monolith forest were injured and needed to eat meat to recover from their injuries. Hey, that kid! A large man with a face full of curly beard carried a broadsword and urged his horse forward. He shouted, "Did you guys come out from the heavenly tome monolith forest?" Nope. Lin Muyu urged his horse forward and returned to his horse. He said, "My sister and I are hunters from White Leaves City. This time, we came to the White Leaves Forest to hunt a kind of spiritual beast called the forked bear and use its paw to treat father's illness. However, we didn't expect that there were no forked bears in this area. Those spiritual beasts are incomparably savage. They even ate my sister's horse. If you guys go forward, you must be careful." The large man was stunned. You guys came from the front?" "Yes," Lin Muyu said, "but we didn't go too deep. Those ferocious beasts are too scary. Although you guys are mercenaries, I advise you not to enter this forest." The large man laughed and patted his chest. "Don't worry. Our cruel willow mercenary group won't give up so easily. You guys go quickly and don't disturb our mercenary group's search for the heavenly tome. Well, then take care." Lin Muyu cupped her fists and immediately urged her horse to leave with Qin Yin. It was better to cause less trouble and return to Lanyan City as soon as possible to take charge of the overall situation. After all, Qin Yin had been away from Lanyan City for at least half a month. She did not know how Tang Xiaoxi and Feng Jixing were doing, nor did she know how the political affairs of Lanyan City were handled. However, Tang Xiaoxi was exceptionally intelligent. She should not have done anything wrong. They galloped along the way. Treading snow ate the wild grass with strong spiritual power in the forest and became plump and strong. Even though they were riding on horses, they still maintained a high speed. It was true that they could travel thousands of miles in a day. They arrived at White Leaves City by dusk. Under the glow of the evening sun, White Leaves City sat in the middle of the field. It was indescribably peaceful. "We'll rest in the White Leaves Forest tonight and set off tomorrow," Lin Muyu said. "Okay. It's time to eat well and sleep well." "Yes." However, just before the two of them entered White Leaves City, they saw a notice posted outside the city wall. It was a wanted poster, and there was a drawing of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Unfortunately, the drawing was 2F** king different. As a result, no one recognized Lin Muyu and Qin Yin when they swaggered into the city. Chapter 5:34. The streets of Whiteleaf City were bustling with activity. As night fell, thousands of lanterns lit up the streets. Cultivators, mercenaries, and noble families from all over the continent appeared in Whiteleaf Forest. Most of them had come for the Forest of Heavenly Tomes. After all, whoever obtained a Heavenly Tomes might be able to become a marquis in the Iha Kingdom or the Empire. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin entered the city dressed as hunters. After finding an inn to stay in, they bought a new set of clothing. Qin Yin wore a plain dress embroidered with golden flowery patterns. Paired with her natural beauty, she looked like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Together with a robe made of animal hide, she looked like a young lady from a wealthy family. Lin Muyu, on the other hand, wore a green robe and carried a long sword on his back. He disguised himself as a bodyguard and even bought a fake beard to stick to his chin. When Lin Muyu grew a beard, Qin Yin couldn't help but smile at his appearance. Soon after, Lin Muyu prepared a mole for Qin Yin. It had to make her look different from the one on the wanted posters. In the end, Qin Yin stuck this mole below her eye. It looked like a tear-shaped mole, but after it was stuck, it made her look even more lovely. As expected, A superb skill like makeup was popular in any plane. At night, they sat by the window of the inn and ate dinner, tasting the unique flavor of Whiteleaf City's wine. A waiter served them a pot of fragrant wine and said, "This is our inn's specialty, 100 Leaves wine. Please enjoy." As he spoke, the waiter looked at Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's swords and couldn't help but ask, "Are the two of you also going to Whiteleaf Forest to find that forest of heavenly tomes?" "What's wrong?" Qin Yin asked. The waiter lowered his voice and said, "If the two of you really want to go to the White Leaves Forest, I advise you not to go. A few days ago, I heard that the second son of the Northern Qi Kingdom's capital, Bailing City, brought a group of people into the White Leaves Forest and was killed by a mysterious person. Not a single one of the hundreds of people he brought with him survived, including many experts and the Iha Kingdom's army." Lin Muyu pretended to be shocked. "The second son of Northern Qi is dead? When did you get the news?" "About 6 or 7 days ago, some mercenaries returned from the White Leaves Forest with the body of Northern Qi's second son, Huan. It is said that Northern Qi is furious and has mobilized thousands of men from the capital to enter the White Leaves Forest to avenge the second son." Qinin smiled. "It's getting more and more lively." The waiter said, "Miss and sir, if you do not insist on entering the White Leaves Forest, I advise you to give up. Right now, the White Leaves Forest is like a pot of hot soup. Most ants that crawl in will be scalded to death. Besides, I heard that there are ancient beasts guarding the treasures in the White Leaves Forest. It's too scary." Lin Muyu said, "Thank you for your kind intentions. In that case, my lady and I will not enter the White Leaves Forest." "Okay, then I will go." "Thank you." Lin Muyu raised her head and glanced at Qin Yin. She could read the amusement in Qin Yin's eyes. The White Leaves Forest was indeed dangerous, but not to that degree. At that moment, a few noblemen sitting at the table next to them began to chat. One of them, wearing a Sao red brocade robe, smiled and said, "These days, everyone is busy going to the White Leaves Forest. Not many people have paid attention to what's happening in Xiang City." "What's happening?" asked another nobleman in a green brocade robe. "Isn't that obvious?" The nobleman in the black brocade robe said, "In order to recruit talents, the Marquis of Xiang, Man Ning, has decided to hold a Heavenly Tome Conference in Xiang City 3 days from now. There will be a total of 10,000 competition seats. Anyone who enters will have to register. Within 2 hours, the person who writes the highest grade of Heavenly Tome Conference will be the champion of the conference. It is said that the champion will receive 8 million Jinin coins on the spot. He will also have the chance to marry the Marquis of Xiang's youngest daughter, Man Tingfang." "Man Tingfang?" The nobleman in the green brocade robe could not hold back and said excitedly, "I heard that Man Tingfang is a rare beauty in Xiang City. She is 18 years old, and she is good at music, chess, calligraphy, singing, and dancing. She is also very pretty with a slim waist and plump buttocks. She does not resemble her father at all. She has long been known as one of the 4 great beauties of Iha country. I wonder which family's nobleman has the fortune to marry Miss Man Tingfang." The nobleman in the red brocade robe raised his paper fan and cupped his fists. "The White Leaves Forest is filled with arrogant mercenaries and cultivators. With our abilities, even if we enter the White Leaves Forest, we will most likely not gain anything. Why don't we use our travel expenses to buy some weapon embryos and low-grade mysterious gold powder to try our luck in Xiang City? Who knows, we might become the Marquis' son-in-law." Very well, very well. We will listen to Brother Lu. Let's set off for Xiang City tomorrow morning. What do you think?" "All right." Lin Muyu heard everything from the side and could not help but be tempted. She said with a smile, "Xiao Yin, why don't we hurry to Xiang City and earn some money? It's 8 million Jinin coins." Qin Yin glared at him and said coquettishly, "Are you really not aiming for Man Tingfang?" "Why would I?" Lin Muyu held her little hand and said, "He ran away after getting the prize money for first place. With Man Ning's appearance, how good can his daughter be?" Qin Yin could not help but laugh. "All right then. It's a waste to leave the 8 million Jinin coins in Xiang City anyway. But the Marquis of Xiang is really rich. He was awarded 8 million Jin coins just for getting first place in the Heavenly Tome Conference. He's really rich. That's why we have to make a trip to Xiang City. We are robbing the rich to help the poor. Is that so? Qin Yin burst into laughter. Her beautiful eyes were like crescent moons. She said with a smile, "If Man Ning is rich, then who is poor?" Lin Muyu patted her chest and said in a low voice, "Xiao Yin should know that I have asked Xiling and the people from the Department of Weaponry to research the magic crystal cannon. It's too expensive. It's not enough without 1 or 200 million Jin coins." Qin Yin nodded gently. "If I didn't know about this, how could I still be the Empress? It's also because of this that I gave you the 10 million Jin coins from the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. It's just that your research on the magic crystal cannon has always been kept a secret. I can't directly give it to you from the Ministry of Revenue. Also, this year's harvest is not too good and expenses are high. The Ministry of Revenue doesn't have much money left." Lin Muyu said angrily, "You're still talking. How much money did you spend on the Heavenly Tome Pavilion? If all that money was given to me, I'm afraid the magic crystal cannon would have been completed long ago." Qin Yin pouted. I didn't know that the Heavenly Tome Pavilion would spend so much money. It's all because Grandfather and His Highness the Seven Seas King urged us. However, the Heavenly Tome Pavilion is in charge of the Heavenly Tome inscriptions within the Empire. It's indispensable, so we must spend this money." "Yes." Lin Muyu picked up a piece of wild boar meat and put it into his mouth. He chewed for a while and swallowed it with a frown. This bacon's hardness was really unbearable. He looked up at Qin Yin and said, "Xiao Yin, you've also comprehended a piece of the Heavenly Tome inscription. If you were given a high-grade tool embryo and mystic gold powder now, how confident are you that you'll be able to form a book?" "Ah." Qin Yin opened her small mouth. Her intelligent eyes were filled with uncertainty. She hummed and said, "The probability of becoming a book is not more than 1 in 1,000. The probability of becoming a heavenly tome is definitely not more than 1 in 100,000. Damn, Xiao Yin, you're too honest. What about brother you? Where's the heavenly tome that you comprehended 4 types of laws?" "Me." Lin Muyu's mood swayed. He raised his hand and twirled his beard. He pretended to be profound and said with a smile, "If you give me high-grade mystic gold powder and a top-grade tool embryo, the probability of becoming a book should be about 20%. However, the probability of becoming a heavenly tome is about the same as yours, about 1 in 100,000. Heavenly tome is too profound and difficult to understand, but the probability of becoming an earthly tome is at least 50%. I wonder if an earthly tome can be exchanged for first place in the Heavenly Tome Conference. If it's a mid-grade earthly tome or above, then it's very possible." Qin Yin pursed her lips and smiled. After all, there are very few people in Iha Kingdom who can write an earthly tome. Huan of Northern Qi is already a well-known figure among the younger generation of scholars. But as you can see, the highest level of heavenly tome that Huan of Northern Qi can write is only a low-grade earthly tome. If brother you can write a mid-grade earthly tome, then this first place is certain to be yours. "Yes." Lin Muyu nodded and smiled. "Hurry and eat. After eating, go to sleep. Have a good night's rest. Tomorrow, we'll head to Xiang City. 2 days should be enough time to reach Xiang City." "Okay." After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Qin Yin went to bed early. Lin Muyu hung the star's sword at her waist. Like the guards and guards, she walked along the corridor of the inn to the rooftop. Using the spirit pulse technique, the strongest aura nearby was Qin Yin's domain. However, she was sound asleep at the moment, so the strength of the aura was not obvious. It was late at night, and there were fewer people on the streets of Whiteleaf City. Only a drunken mercenary and a cultivator were still walking leisurely on the streets, fighting at every turn. Their rough and disturbing roars could be heard in the night sky. "What are you looking at?" "So what if I'm looking at you?" Lin Muyu sat on the carved railing and smiled as she watched a few mercenaries fight with clumsy iron swords on the street in the distance. They were very careful, and the speed at which they stabbed their swords was shockingly slow, as if they were afraid of hurting their opponents. With one look, one could tell that they were just a bunch of weaklings showing off their strength. Not long after, a gong sounded, and a group of people dressed in patrolmen's uniforms appeared to maintain law and order. Immediately, a few of the drunk mercenaries were unhappy, and they began to curse that the patrolmen of Iha country were useless, that Marquis Manning was an old fool, and that Qin Yi was a hypocritical person who only cared about profit. Lin Muyu was very happy to hear this. Just like that, he sat on the railing and circulated the qi in his body. He cultivated the Vajra protection divine art and the dragon forging bone remnant scroll, and in the blink of an eye, he entered a dreamland. When he woke up, the sun was already rising. Chapter 5:35. After rushing for 2 days, they finally arrived at Sunset City the day before the Heavenly Tome Conference. However, when Lin Muyu and Qin Yin arrived at Sunset City, they found that it was overcrowded because of the Heavenly Tome Conference. All the inns were already full. Finally, Lin Muyu used her killer move, paying 3 times the room price, and finally checked into a medium-sized inn. At night, they left the inn and went to the local Heavenly Tome materials store to purchase the necessary equipment, embryos and spiritual powder for the Heavenly Tome Conference. Sunset City was far more prosperous than Whiteleaf City. For safety's sake, Qin Yin wore a purple cloak, covering her beautiful face under the hood. Only when she raised her head could her beautiful eyes, which were like black gemstones, be seen. Lin Muyu's attire was even more safe. He changed from a handsome young man to a bearded uncle, and no one could recognize him. After entering a material shop at the corner of the street, an extremely fat shopkeeper came forward and said with a smile, "Looking at the elegant and extraordinary attire of the two of you, you must be famous scholars. Our shop has everything you need. As long as you want it, we have it. Please choose for yourselves." Lin Muyu said, "Shopkeeper, what kind of equipment embryos do you have here?" "Equipment embryos?" The shopkeeper chuckled and said, "You found the right place. Our store's equipment embryos can be said to be the most complete and best in Sunset City. We have everything from low-grade equipment embryos to supreme-grade equipment embryos. Let's take a look at the supreme-grade equipment embryos first." "Oh!" The shopkeeper's eyes lit up. He thought to himself that a fat sheep had arrived. People who dared to directly say that they wanted to see supreme-grade equipment embryos must be rich. The bearded man in front of him must be the son of a wealthy family, just that he looked a little rough. "Young master, please take a look. Our store has a total of 2 supreme-grade equipment embryos." The shopkeeper held up a steel knife and a shield. He said, "This knife is made of 10,000-year black iron. The material is first-rate and has abundant spiritual power. It can greatly increase the chances of completing a book. The price is 200,000 Jin Hun coins. This shield is made of black iron, and its spiritual power is slightly inferior. The price is 170,000 Jin Hun coins." Lin Muyu took the long blade and the shield and touched them lightly with her knuckles. A dang sound echoed continuously. The spiritual power of these 2 weapon embryos was indeed abundant, but it was definitely not worth such an expensive price. Thinking about it carefully, the star's sword hanging on Lin Muyu's waist was the real peerless weapon embryo. However, he didn't dare to inscribe a heavenly book on the star's sword without 100% confidence. If it didn't become a book, or it became a human book or spiritual book, it would be equivalent to writing something bad, and he would definitely cry to death. "Forget it." Lin Muyu put down her sword and shield and said, "Can you show me the high-grade artifact embryo?" The shopkeeper was a little disappointed. He didn't feel good about not being able to scam a big shot. He pointed to the counter at the side and said, "These are all high-grade tool embryos. They are priced between 2,000 and 700 Jin Yin coins." Lin Muyu glanced at them and suddenly smiled. "Shopkeeper, tell me directly, which one is the 2,000 Jin Yin coins embryo?" The shopkeeper's body trembled. He took out a fine steel wrist guard from the counter and said, "This pair of fine steel wrist guards is made from 10 million Xian steel. It's indestructible. This one, only costs 2,000 Jin coins. Alright, I'll take it. Lin Muyu laughed heartily. Give me some low-grade Xian gold powder too. The shopkeeper was startled. This sir should also be participating in the Heavenly Book Conference. How can you be so confident that you can complete a book in one go? Why don't you choose a few more weapon embryos? The Heavenly Book Conference only has a time limit, but not a quantity limit. You can inscribe 7 or 8 weapon embryos in 2 hours. Why don't you buy a few more? These 2 days, many people have bought 2-digit weapon embryos in my store. No need. Lin Muyu smiled slightly. One is enough. Looking at his overflowing confidence and calmness, the shopkeeper couldn't help but tremble. He sighed to himself. This is 2F** King Stingy. Afterward, he spent a small amount of Xian gold powder. However, it wasn't until after he bought it that Lin Muyu remembered that Northern Qi Huan had actually given him some mid-grade Xian gold powder in his dimensional bag. The few hundred Jin coins he had spent earlier had been wasted. Qin watched from the side as Lin Muyu shopped. She couldn't help but sigh. This brother of hers was too good at running a household. He was not just stingy. He was unwilling to spend money that he could avoid. However, he was never stingy when it came to developing the magic crystal cannons and equipping the valiant dragon army. Thinking of this, Qin Yin's heart warmed. After nightfall, Lin Muyu played with the wristband in his hand. He looked at it carefully and made up his mind. This wristband had a very small area for inscribing divine text. He had to reduce the number of words to about 500 words. This also meant that he couldn't inscribe a complete 1,000 words in the divine book. He had to reduce the divine book of the 4 great laws to 500 words or less. Thus, after spending half the night, Lin Muyu had reduced the divine book of the fire laws, Fire God Extinguishes the World, to 500 words. He had removed some long passages and kept some key words. He didn't know if he could make it into a book, so he could only put it together. The next day, he woke up early and checked out of the room with Qin Yin. They led the 2 war horses straight to the Heavenly Tome Conference. The Heavenly Tome Conference was held in the Hall of Heavenly Tome at the side of the Sunset Temple. The Hall of Heavenly Tome was the #1 department of Heavenly Tome in the Swift White Province, personally approved by Commander Qin Yi. It had the same status as the Heavenly Tome Pavilion in the North Ridge Province. The plaza of the Hall of Heavenly Tome was already filled with tens of thousands of tables for the participants to use. When Lin Muyu and Qin Yin rushed to the periphery, they saw a sea of people. Qin Yin was a little worried. Brother Yu, let's hurry and sign up. Otherwise, the quota will be full. Lin Muyu said, let's sign up separately. But Qin Yin took the lead and squeezed into the crowd. He slowly released a little pressure from his body and pushed the surrounding people away, allowing him to successfully reach a group of examiners. After spending 10 Jin coins to sign up, he received a bamboo stick with his name and participation number written on it. Of course, the name was written as Lin Yin, a very ordinary name. It was only when Qin Yin came out that Lin Muyu squeezed into the crowd. An examiner raised his head and squinted at him. He asked, "What's your name? What's your identity? Where are you from?" Lin Muyu blurted out, "My name is Li Laifu. I'm from the eastern border of the Swift White Province. I'm the Li Residence's protector." Li Residence's protector? The examiner laughed loudly. A mere protector dares to participate in the Heavenly Tome Conference? What a joke! Give me 10 Jin coins and I'll write your name on it. Yes. After Lin Muyu handed over the gold coins, the examiner waved his brush and wrote 4 words on it. Li Residence's protector, Li Laifu. Dang 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 dang. The gong sounded noisily, and an examiner yelled at the top of his lungs, "The Heavenly Tome Conference is about to begin. Participants, please return to your seats. Those who have completed a book, please come to the main examiner's office to register within 2 hours." 10,000 people were inscribing a heavenly tome together. It was a spectacular sight. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's tables were about 50 meters apart. Through the crowd, Qin Yin smiled sweetly at him. Lin Muyu gave her a thumbs up to encourage her. The materials Qin Yin used were all of the best quality. Logically speaking, she should be able to compete for a place. Marquis Sunset has arrived. A fat figure appeared in the Heavenly Tome Hall's main hall. It was Marquis Sunset Man Ning. Lin Muyu looked at him from afar. Man Ning seemed to be fatter and older, but the cunning gleam in his eyes did not change. Dozens of guards with extraordinary cultivation surrounded Man Ning's fat body. Not far away, the figure of a high-ranking general of the country of nominal peace also appeared. It was Ding Shi. Lin Muyu never thought that she would see Ding Shi here. He wouldn't recognize her, would he? She quickly lowered her cultivation aura to the minimum, then lowered her head and did not look up. Not far away, Qin Yin did the same. It would be strange if Ding Shi could recognize her in the examination hall of tens of thousands of people. Man Ning raised his hand and gestured. Immediately, the main examiner stood up and said loudly, "The competition begins. The time limit is 2 hours." The young masters and ladies in the competition hall were moved. One by one, they took out their tool embryos and placed them at the side. They began to write with flying dragons and dancing phoenixes, but soon, the sound of sighs became one. In nearly half an hour, no one could write a book. It could be seen how difficult it was to write a heavenly tome. Lin Muyu carefully sat cross-legged in the same place. He used mid-grade black gold powder to write oracle bone script characters that were almost indistinguishable to the naked eye on the black steel wristband. He was so focused that he did not look at the progress of the other participants. He also did not notice that a few young masters he had met in Whiteleaf City a few days ago were sitting at the tables beside him. However, a few of the young masters recognized Lin Muyu. They could not help but laugh mockingly. "Isn't this the guard who accompanied the beautiful young mistress in Whiteleaf City to drink and eat meat? This kind of idiot actually dares to participate in the Heavenly Tome Conference. He is simply asking to be humiliated. If he can write a book, I will eat *T. The red embroidered young master's brush suddenly flew up and shot into the sky. It was a light green brilliance. He could not help but be overjoyed. "Aha, I've written a book. It's a low-grade spiritual book." The bystanders all cast envious gazes at him. Not long after, a few more people wrote books, but they were all human books. Lin Muyu was still focused on writing on the black steel wristband in his hands. The surface of the wristband was suffused with a faint golden light. To be able to write so small was also a kind of ability. At this moment, many of the young masters had already turned their gazes to the front. They saw a beautiful young lady dressed in luxurious clothing sitting there. She had a delicate face, beautiful eyebrows, and bright eyes. She was a young lady who was full of spirit. The spiritual brush in her hand was constantly waving, writing the marks of the black gold powder on a shield. She looked very focused. The green embroidered young master at the side was enchanted. "Oh my God, is that the #1 beauty of Sunset City, Man Tingfang? As expected, she is as beautiful as a jade carving. If I can get first place, will I be able to marry her?" Man Tingfang seemed to have heard the young master's words. She immediately looked back, her beautiful eyes filled with disgust. This was an incomparably cold and arrogant young lady. Chapter 5:36. Swoosh. A rich orange light shot into the sky from the arena. It was another heavenly book that attracted the power of heaven and earth. Furthermore, it was a superior grade spiritual book. The first spiritual book in the arena was actually a superior grade spiritual book. The short sword that became the carrier of the spiritual book was slowly placed on the table. The creator was a young man of about 27 or 28 years old. He slowly stood up and cried tears of joy to the sky. "It's a book, a book? It's a superior grade spiritual book. Father, do you see it? Your child has become a book. I didn't disgrace my ancestors. The time for our Sikong family to rise again has come." Before he could finish crying, another orange beam of light shot into the sky beside him. Swoosh! It was another heavenly book that attracted the power of heaven and earth. The light was even more intense. It should be a superior grade spiritual book. The girl beside the spiritual book stood up slowly. It was Man Tingfang. She walked to the examiner's table with an exquisite shield and said with a smile, "Father, your daughter has written a superior grade spiritual book." Man Ning was gratified and said with a smile, "You are indeed my daughter. Fang Er, come and sit beside father. Examiner, please register Fang Er." The examiner nodded. Ding Shi cupped his fists and said with a smile, "Congratulations to Miss Fang for writing a superior grade spiritual book. Logically speaking, Miss Fang is likely to be the champion of this heavenly book conference, right?" The corner of Man Tingfang's mouth rose. She said with a smile, "Thank you, Marshal Ding Shi, for your kind words. However, there are many capable people in this heavenly book conference. Perhaps there are people more powerful than Fang Er." Although Man Tingfang spoke very modestly, her eyes were already filled with arrogance. In her eyes, the 10,000 participants of the Heavenly Book Conference had already become losers. If it wasn't for the inappropriate occasion, she would have already put her snow-white legs on the table. Ding Shi smiled without saying anything. The youngest daughter of the Sunset Marquis Man Ning had been spoiled and pampered since young. He had suffered greatly from Man Tingfang's domineering and unruly ways. Rays of light flew out one after another in the arena, but the books that were written were all human books, so it was no longer strange. As long as a scholar entered the Heavenly Book Hall, even the worst one would be able to write a human book. This kind of person could only be called a talent, but not a genius. At this moment, a ray of light shot into the sky from the arena. It was an earthy yellow light that shot into the sky. Book of the Earth. The first Earth book appeared, although it was only a low-grade Earth book. Just like Man Tingfang, the author was also a young woman. However, she wore a dark purple cloak, and her face was hidden under the hood. She slowly stood up, held the artifact embryo, and came before the chief examiner. She handed over her bamboo stick, but the artifact embryo was still kept by herself. Otherwise, it would become the Heavenly Book Hall usurping the Heavenly Book. After all, if they wanted to collect this local book, they had to pay a certain price. The examiner looked up, but Qin Yin had already turned around. The moment Qin Yin turned around, Man Tingfang saw the peerless beauty under the cloak. In an instant, Man Tingfang was dumbfounded. She mumbled, "Impossible? This is absolutely impossible." Man Ning furrowed his brows and said, "Feng, what's impossible? There's always someone better than you, and there's always someone better out there. For someone to be able to write an earthly book, it's naturally because of his ability." Man Tingfang still shook her head. "Impossible, there's definitely no one more beautiful than me." Ding Shi vomited blood at the side. This Man Tingfang's attention was completely different, but it was very rare for a woman to be more beautiful than Man Tingfang. Ding Shi really couldn't think of any other woman in Sunset City who could be more beautiful than Man Tingfang, and even make her admit it herself. Man Tingfang's beautiful face was filled with pain. She couldn't accept all of this. A woman who was more beautiful than her was actually able to inscribe a heavenly book of a higher grade than her. Where was the justice in this world? For a moment, Man Tingfang's heart was filled with emotions. Since there's a Yu, why should there be a Liang? There's still half an incense stick of time until the end of the competition. An examiner with a louder voice shouted. Lin Muyu was still fully focused on inscribing the divine text on the mystic steel wrist guard. On the side, a group of young masters had already given up on the idea of writing a book, but they still tirelessly teased Lin Muyu, who in their eyes was a rough and burly man. You actually wrote so many words." The young master in green had a look of disdain on his face. "Do you think you can write a book with so many words? Ha, you idiot, if you can write a book, I'll eat sheep dung." The young master in yellow laughed heartily. "This wrist guard looks ordinary, but you actually used mid-grade mystic gold powder to inscribe. This guy must be crazy. If you can write a spiritual book, oh no, if you can write an earthly book, I'll eat dog dung in front of everyone, ha." The young man in red laughed even more savagely. "You little brat, if you can write it into a book, I will go to the stables and buy a giant elephant in front of everyone. I will watch the elephant poop." As long as it can poop, no matter how big it is, I will eat it all. What do you think? Lin Muyu remained silent and continued to inscribe the heavenly book. A few minutes later, just as the incense stick was about to burn out, Lin Muyu also finished writing the last 4 words on the wrist guard. Fire God destroys the world. The divine text indeed responded, and the golden light shone brightly. The next moment, the words condensed into a rich yellow light that shot up into the sky. It was another earthly book, and judging from the intensity of the light, it was a top-grade earthly book. Oh my God! Man Tingfang was so shocked that he stood up from his seat. He rubbed his eyes and said, "How is this possible? How can such a big beard write a top-grade earthly book?" Lin Muyu stood up and looked at the mystic steel wrist guard in satisfaction. There was a faint flame on it. This was a top-grade earthly book on the law of fire. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the young masters. Who was the one who said he wanted to eat dog dung in a variety of ways? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The young masters ran away in a flash, and Lin Muyu couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. People these days had no trust at all. Holding the top-grade earthly book and walking forward, Lin Muyu pinched his throat and said in a strange voice, "Sir, I'm done. This is my bamboo stick. Please help me register it." Young master. The chief examiner's face was full of respect. He knew that the person who wrote a top-grade earthly book would most likely be summoned by the commander soon, and might even be listed as a noble. This kind of person could not be offended. Man Ning also stood up, cupped his fists, and said with a smile, "This young master wrote a top-grade earthly book in one go. It's a blessing for my Sunset City, a blessing for my Iha country. Chief Examiner, what's this young master's name?" The chief examiner was surprised. "Young master is Li Residence Protector." Li Residence Protector? Man Ning frowned, then immediately smiled and said, "Young master is truly an outstanding talent." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "Is the ranking out?" The incense had already burned out, and Man Ning nodded. "Chief Examiner, please announce the ranking." "Yes, Marquis." The chief examiner walked forward with the scroll in hand and announced in a clear voice, "First place of the Heavenly Book Conference, Li Residence Protector Li Laifu. Second place of the Heavenly Book Conference, Lin Yin. Third place of the Heavenly Book Conference, Miss Man Tingfang." "I don't want." Man Tingfang looked at Lin Muyu's bearded face and couldn't help but take a few steps back. She grabbed Marquis Xiang's hand and said, "Father, this person is so ugly, I don't want him, I don't want to marry him." Man Ning frowned. "Feng, don't be stubborn, you should listen to your parents when it comes to marriage. This young master Li has both integrity and talent. You will naturally understand his good qualities in the future." "Servants, prepare a banquet in the Sunset Hall. I want to invite the Li Residence Protector Li, Miss Lin Yin, and the top 10 scholars today." "Yes, Marquis." "No, I don't want." Man Tingfang's voice was very loud, and she turned around to enter the Heavenly Book Hall, extremely stubborn. Man Ning felt a little helpless and cupped his fists. "I'm very sorry, young Master Li, my daughter has always been unruly and willful, but I will definitely persuade her to marry you. This is the promise of the Heavenly Book Conference." Lin Muyu said respectfully, "Marquis, may I ask when the rewards will be distributed?" Man Ning couldn't help but laugh, and immediately said, "Chief Examiner, please give young Master Li and Miss Lin the corresponding gold tickets." The chief examiner walked forward and presented the prepared gold tickets. Lin Muyu received 80 gold tickets worth 100,000 each, and Qin Yin received 20. This time, the two of them had earned a total of 10 million Jin Yin dollars. The Sunset Hall began to prepare for the noon banquet, while Lin Muyu and Qin Yin looked at each other and smiled. The money was already in their hands. It was time to slip away. The Heavenly Book Conference was very complicated, and it was not difficult to slip away. Lin Muyu suddenly activated the Holy King realm to suppress a few guards, and immediately blended into the crowd with Qin Yin. They found a war horse in the periphery, and the two of them leaped onto the horse and rode straight to the north gate of Sunset City. There were not many people in the alleyway. It seemed that everyone had gone to watch the Heavenly Book Conference. However, they had not gone far when they suddenly heard the sound of horse hooves in front of them. A group of Iha Nation cavalry, led by a young girl, rushed over. That young girl was Man Tingfang. "Oh no," Qin Yin whispered, "has our identity been exposed?" "Not necessarily," Lin Muyu said calmly. "Let's go and see what she has to say." Man Tingfang pointed a finger in the distance and said, "That bearded man, you actually used a trick to write a top-grade Earth book? What a despicable person. This young lady will never marry someone as despicable as you. Men, capture him, I want to interrogate him properly." The guard at the side looked helpless. "Miss Fong, if we disrespect the Heavenly Book Conference's champion, we won't be able to bear the Marquis's wrath." Man Tingfang gritted her teeth. "A bunch of trash. If you don't do it, I'll do it myself." As she said that, Man Tingfang suddenly pulled out a thin sword and urged her horse to charge over. Lin Muyu could not help but find it funny. She urged her horse forward, a faint ruler's battle flame circulating in her palm. Just as Man Tingfang pulled out her sword, her palm gently flipped, and a suction force wrapped around the sword's blade. With a sudden tug, Man Tingfang fell from her battle horse. However, at the same time, she reached out and grabbed Lin Muyu's fake beard. With a swoosh, she pulled the fake beard down and dropped it to the ground. Ah! Man Tingfang looked up and saw that Lin Muyu had transformed into an incomparably handsome young man after losing his beard. Moreover, a faint ruler's battle flame was enshrouding his body. One look and it was obvious that his cultivation was not ordinary. In an instant, Man Tingfang's heart was in a mess, and her face turned red. She said, "You're not allowed to leave. The champion of the Heavenly Book Conference must marry me." Lin Muyu looked at her with a smile and said something that made everyone burst out laughing. "I don't want to." Qin Yin giggled and urged her horse forward. She tugged on Taksha's reins and galloped toward the north gate with Lin Muyu. Man Tingfang looked up in the direction that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had disappeared. Her pretty face was full of unwillingness. She whimpered in pain and said, "No matter where you run to, I will catch you and bring you back to marry me. Just you wait." You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.